can pay my tribute to you. I think it is necessary because indeed I want the public to know how much I want to congratulate you on your most recent national honor. Since we have gained each other's acquaintances, I have found you to be intelligent, respectable, with a fascinating personality. You possess an excellent understanding, knowledge, and application of jurisprudence. Over the years that I've observed you, which are very many years, in your professional approach and deportment, your standards are high. Your dignity, unimpeachable. Your attitude is allied to a respectfulness to persons wherever they are. A lady of sound character you are, exceptionally good disposition, and unfailingly exhibits lady-like qualities, and I know that you are held in high esteem by all. Even your relationship with the young people, your avuncular relationship with them, is worthy of estimation. And I'm sure that Senator Rogers would agree with me that if you were living, if you were living in 4 BC, God himself would have changed the roles. Mary would have been the mother of John, and Elizabeth would have been the mother of Jesus. And I hope I'm not charged with heresy on that. 680? Why is that 4 BC? But we can give you that. But, ma'am, I believe that you are worthy of any honor that is bestowed upon you. I also rise to...
I would wish to thank the Honourable Senator and to remind the Honourable Senator that the clock has already begun to started running. So how much of her time you have left, having spent time on this, Elizabeth, who is very grateful for the compliments, but I'm not increasing your time, Senator.
I understand. Ma'am, I have a particular interest in this bill from an historical perspective. If you look at history, in fact, history, in my opinion, is being made live again when we check places in North America, places in South America. There is this new element, especially in the sea. The argument is that if persons traveled the seas, if colonizers traveled the seas at that time, and if there were boats and ships involved, there must be something in the sea that can impact on the history and culture of nations. As I speak to you, they are still looking at Lonesome Meadow in Canada because they want to tie the evidence with the sagas about the Vikings' history. They come to the Americas long before Columbus. And all the evidence now seems to be indicating that there is a connection between Lonesome Meadow and the Viking travel many years ago. This, to me, is important because in the Caribbean itself, there is concern that even the Spanish vessels that were here in the Caribbean that made that journey from the Caribbean back to Spain, that there are many Spanish ships which are sunk in the Atlantic with vast treasures. And people are becoming interested in that again. But what piqued me most about this bill was our own history and the retelling of that history. because I believe that our marine area is also important to our history. When I served this country in London, I attended a celebration of the Victoria Cross, those soldiers who were from the Caribbean and were assisting the British in their wars. The professor from Cambridge talked and he mentioned all sorts of things, but I remember in particular that he was mentioning BRP, and for him, BRP meant Brazil to the River Plate. That Britain used Brazil as a hub during World War II. Now, for any persons who know the area, it would not make sense. Brazil to River Plate, both are in South America. That wouldn't make sense. But really, BRP in those annals mean Barbados to the River Plate. Barbados too was used as a hub, and we know from our history that the Germans were here in Barbados. The folklore about the Cornwallis getting hit from behind, it was here in Barbados. We know that German soldiers came here and went to theaters and all, the plays and all of that. And these are all aspects of our history and our folklore. The issue with lighthouses. We have the lore of Sam Lord. The lighthouses. When people see the light, they thought they were safe. And whether the apples were made of gold or they were just fruit. These are part of our culture. So we have the ports, the lighthouses. There is a town in Jamaica, Port Royal. Port Royal, destroyed by an earthquake in 1692. So we have a lot of history that is tied to the ocean. And I believe that we need to protect that. In fact, investigate it and protect it. Exactly, And therefore, I don't want to speak too long on this because I'm sure that the senators who were able to hear my voice at Combermere could hear this coming from, in fact, ma'am, these are my notes, some of my notes from Combermere School. So I don't want to prolong this debate, but the point is that they are all important to us. However, if we are going to develop and attach our marine area to our own history and culture, I believe that archaeologists must play a part in it, even before we consider unearthing. There's an area out here, I heard Senator Maynard speak about it already, just out here where they're developing a hotel. And I'm asking, and this is near the sea. This is near the sea. What architectural artifacts have been left? What are they? And I am interested in this because even so, madam, we are also still looking at the connection of Africans in the Caribbean prior to the visit of Columbus. I mean, there's enough evidence, but there's also some marine evidence that I believe would be important simply because thousands of our people died in the oceans. And so with those few remarks, ma'am, I wish to indicate that I lend my support to this bill.
Senator Dr. Knight. Senator, the other doctor. Well, no, there are so many. Senator Dr. Maynard, please.
Thank you for recognizing me, ma'am. Madam President, I rise to congratulate you on your recent award. I consider it a reward well-deserved for your years of faithful service and dedication. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time repeating what other members of this chamber have already said, but I simply wish to say that there are few who would have given as much as you have, both locally and internationally. So I congratulate you once again. Ma'am, this bill that's before us in this season is a long, important bill that has implications for generations to come. It's a little bit of a pity that it will be debated in such a rushed way. And I say that without any regret. There is so much contained within this bill that I believe that each section of this bill requires a separate day for debate. But as it stands, that will not be possible. Madam President, I grew up very close to a fishing village called Silver Sands. So the salt and the raw smell runs in my blood. And most of my family are fishermen and mechanics. So we build them and we fix them. And I've listened in this chamber to some of the things that are being said. And I too could rise on a point of order and correct some, but I chose not to. We recently had Hurricane Beryl. And Hurricane Beryl did things to the fishing industry in a very short time that probably few other hurricanes did. It destroyed a modern fishing industry, and it is going to delay its resurgence for a long time. There are persons who lost property, as in small boats, but lost livelihoods in that fisheries complex that will probably never get them back. And families across this country are impacted in ways that you might hear of it in the public, but not understand the pain that some people are experiencing. I go to the fish market quite often. I guess it's part of who I am. And it's remarkable how empty it is. And it's empty because there's not much fish to sell. And I know a lot of people who depend on that boat that goes out to fish. And that boat supports not the fishermen on the boat in the exclusion, but extended families. And the extended families go back as far as great-grandparents who do not have any ownership of the boat, but fish from the boat feeds those people, and all that is gone. And I congratulate the government for making some effort to provide some income to the fishermen and the boat owners. And I understand that government cannot do it forever. But we have to ask ourselves this question: when we fix it, how long will it last? When we replace the boats, could the same thing happen again? And are there things that we can do simple things to mitigate against some of the damage. And just to comment on something, I have a close friend who had a small boat, so 22 feet, and his boat ended up on the bottom in the fisheries complex. It ended up on the bottom in the fisheries complex simply because he could not haul it up in Oistins because the slipway was full of boulders. Boulders. There are rocks in the path that you're supposed to haul the boats up. And therefore, he took the boat down to the fisheries complex, like many other people. So when we fix this problem, we also have to deal with the issue of maintenance. That these sites that government spends money on for the fisheries are maintained in such a way that in an emergency, an anticipated emergency, like a hurricane or, Lord forbid, a tsunami, if you knew there was one coming, that we could get the boats out of the water in a timely fashion. Now, I asked myself whether this is not the right time for regulation. Before Beryl came, I used to go into the market and I didn't curse in vile language, but I cursed about the size of dolphins being sold. And I have been told on occasion that those were different species of dolphin. I am a doctor. I can't argue because I don't know the details, but I didn't believe it. There has to be regulation within the fishing industry that will control the size of your fish catch. And if you bring in juvenile fish, or rather you should not be able to land juvenile fish, and net sizes need to be regulated. We have seen the disappearance of the sea egg. Multiple factors involved in it. One has to ask whether overfishing was a contributing factor, because it was, apart from setting a season in terms of the number of weeks you're allowed to fish the eggs, there was never any regulation on the quantity you could harvest. Yes, there are other factors like agriculture runoff and all the toxic chemicals that we brought in to Barbados that were banned in other places being allowed to run in the sea, but we may have contributed to the disappearance of the sea egg in a major way, not only because of overfishing during the legal times, but outside of the legal times. Now, we spoke of cultural heritage in the sea, and if you drive around Barbados, you will still be able to observe that some houses, there are cannons in front of the house, and they are genuine old cannons taken from the sea. And at the fort in Oistins, and certainly over by the Hilton, I don't remember the name of that fort, Needham's Point, Needham's Fort, there are still many cannons in the water. And I've noticed that in this bill, it's now clearly stated that those are the property of the state. And I'm very pleased about that. But I also think that the old bottles in Bay Street that people take out from in Carlisle Bay and take them all over the world because they recognize the value of these bottles. They are our bottles, and they shouldn't be taken. And while the bill requires a person who finds a relic to report it, I ask, how will we police that? How will we know that if someone found a relic somewhere, that you will within the 7 days come and declare that I have this relic, particularly if it is valuable and is no way of, or no way set up yet to make people declare it. Unless somebody, you have a set of people now who will advise that on my boat somebody brought this thing up and they did not declare it. So there has to be a lot of thinking and thought and regulations put in place to achieve some of these things we want to achieve. But if I may spend a little bit of time talking about sea eggs. We spoke about preservation of vessels that have cultural significance. And there was a time on the beaches of every fishing village, you would find boats, fishing boats, belonging to what I call the previous generation. That's not a thing of the past, because we seem to have a propensity to put everything in the dump. If you go to Oistins early in the evening, the beach is clean. There are no old boats at the back of Beer Gardens because they were all removed from the beach as an eyesore. And those boats, to my mind, were relics of the past. And that is how we used to build boats. They were built with mahogany ribs and all the other materials that were used. Now they're built with synthetics, fiberglass. We can't destroy the relics and then expect to preserve them. Over 10 years ago, Professor Sir Henry Fraser started a movement looking at the lighthouses in Barbados and preserving the lighthouses. And there was actually talk about public sector, private sector cooperation that would involve preservation of lighthouses. And I'm pleased that this government has now has plans to formalize the preservation of lighthouses. But I warn you that they will not last very long if you don't act soon, because there's nothing that reacts faster than iron and salt air. And if you doubt me, go to South Point Lighthouse and see what's happening to it. Or go to Ragged Point. They do not take neglect very well. And we've waited almost too long to save what are important cultural relics. Maybe we'll act soon on it. And the reward will be that there'll be many Barbadians and tourists visiting these places and paying small fees that will help to maintain them. Now, there are relics of cultural interest that do not count like ships and big vessels. And I don't know if I ask in this chamber if there's anyone here who can tell me the things that were used in harvesting sea eggs, if there are 3 people who could tell me. And Senator Rogers just said the maypole. Well, yes, the maypole was the local floating device used in the sea. Well, when last did anybody see a maypole growing? We dig them up now. We now have machines, bobcats, and we come around the cactus. It's the pole that comes up from the cactus and it flowers in May. Bright, beautiful yellow flower. But people dig them up now because they're sharp and they're a nuisance. So you don't see them anymore. I still have one growing, by the way. Now, they're relics of the fishing industry, engines and tools, that if the notion of the museum that is mentioned in this bill ever gets off the ground, it could really be a good thing. And I hope that in the same way that the government will look at private sector, public sector funding to fund big projects, that it may find some time to look at private sector, public sector funding in starting this museum. I thank you, ma'am.
Senator Boyce, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I was listening and my speech was coming together as I was hearing the contributions. So I rise inspired, perhaps to continue from where my friend and colleague, Senator Dr. Maynard, left off. Firstly, ma'am, let me join in the accolades. I would say personally that you have always gently guided me when I've transgressed, and you've done it in such a manner that I was unaware that I was being chided until much later, so I thank you for it. And I think that your contribution is one which is not yet at its zenith, so we look forward to seeing where you go from here. I think the topic today is one which we're all ad idem: Barbados, beaches, preservation. I had a recent cause, as pointed out by Senator Dr. Drakes, to be on the West Coast, enjoying this beautiful island, which sometimes when you live somewhere, you don't really get to experience it like a tourist, because I had some friends visiting from Trinidad to celebrate a significant milestone. So one of the gentlemen booked a cruise for us, and we went down on a catamaran on the West Coast, and I have not done that in a long time. It was a beautiful day. I swam with turtles, which I haven't done in a while, scuba dive, snorkel, all that good stuff. And it really brings home an appreciation for what we have and the need to preserve it. As I was listening to the debate and the concept of where have the CX gone, I will say it, I might get my Bajan card revoked, but I'm never a big fan of CX, I'll be very honest with you. I know it's a delicacy, but the smell alone will, send me in a certain direction. I might do something with a CCAT, man. I might do something with a CCAT, but CX is where I draw the line. But I remember, ma'am, attending at Hastings when there was I think it was, the KFC was still there, and you could literally go down onto the reef, which was so rich and abundant. And I remember being there with my uncle and my cousins and seeing starfish and urchins and all types and manners of marine wildlife, which we don't have anymore. We don't have it anymore. And we know the reasons for it. We can't sit down here and blame each other, which we could try to do, but it's global warming, it's coral bleaching, it's an effect of development, it's the rise in sea temperatures. Corals in Barbados have been under significant attack for decades now. So we recognize that that comes at an impact. And all I'll say on this is that the same beauty that we so treasure and the same urge where others tell us to develop and do things with, when the development reaches to a point where that beauty is no longer there, we will be discarded. So there has to be a harmonious recognition that too far left is right, and that as far as we go in getting wherever we believe we should be, we need to be cognizant of what we have and to preserve it for future generations. Now, two aspects of this bill I really wanted to speak on, because I believe that it provides opportunity for all of us and for the country as a whole. Firstly, in terms of the questions of wrecks, I'll be a bit naughty, ma'am, and say that we've had an exponential increase in the number of wrecks off the coast of Barbados after Hurricane Beryl. But there's an opportunity in that tragedy. The same way the government was able to recognize the need for increased output of construction workers, is there an opportunity here for us to delve and put resources in to develop a shipwright or boatswain industry for persons to assist in the repair of these boats and to manifest what we have such a latent talent for and increase our dry dock capabilities? Why must boats be going to Trinidad or up the coast of St. Kitts or these places when we have such talent here? Why can't we expand it in terms of our ability as a production sector to go beyond the concept of fishing and to go beyond the concept of construction and say we are going to make ourselves the premier boat repair center in the Caribbean. Maybe there's some good that could come from these losses that we have suffered, and we could seek to exponentially increase the resources that are available to it. Something to be considered. But I was particularly excited, ma'am, with the concept of the marine heritage area. And I think it's something that I would love to hear more spoken about. I think it presents great potential for investors to allow a symbiotic development, as I note the number of ministries involved in what is necessary for any proposal. Indeed, ma'am, we can all remember when I started to conceptualize and thinking out loud, and dare I make suggestions for the government, we have an opportunity with any such marine heritage center to perhaps capture those iconic statues such as Nelson, which caused great divide within our nation. He was removed with great ceremony. I'm not sure where he presently is, and I'm referring it as a person, but this is a topic which engages Barbadians from all walks of life, from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, from all different racial backgrounds, ma'am. It is also something which we can tie into the venomous transatlantic slave trade with regard to recognition of our history. This is what this country was literally built on. These are the facts, these are the components of our history. Maybe these maritime heritage areas would be able to capture all this information, present an area where we can allow our visitors, ourselves, our children to reckon with some parts of our past that we're not the most comfortable with. But unless you face it head on, you might then find yourself a future where persons are asking you what you're talking about when you speak about certain atrocities. There's also, ma'am, I think, potential to incorporate the development and the management of treasure to these types of areas. I like the concept that he who finds the treasure owns, and that the treasure is recognized as revenue for the state, so of course that's for the taxation purposes. In all, ma'am, you then incorporate the traditional knowledge holders, which is provided for in the statute, to allow that homegrown or organic. I'm sure the leader of government business will tell you about going to visit the Bob Marley Museum and interacting with persons who've been there from the beginning to tell you the story. Once again, let's tell our own stories. We have so many stories to tell here on this little island, which at the end of the day is derived from coral. So, Madam President, that's my short contribution. I support this legislation, and I believe it provides good opportunities for future development of this nation. I thank you.
Senator King.
Thank you, Madam President. I shan't be long, but I think under the circumstances, there's just a couple of things that I would like to put to the chamber. And we've spoken a lot about this bill in terms of how it looks at heritage. And one of the things that the bill speaks about also is natural heritage. And as part of that natural heritage, there are lots of things which we've not explored in the past, minerals, and as was mentioned by Senator Worrell, I think it was biotechnology. And I'm doing a little bit of research on such things. One of the things that I came across was the use of what they call Caribbean sponges to deal with ailments, if I could use that term for the doctors in the house, for cancer treatment and different things like that. And we have been talking a lot in Barbados. I heard the economists and everybody keep talking about the diversification of the economy. And this presents us with an absolute great opportunity to do such. The establishment of the Barbados Ocean Minerals Secretariat. And that is where my interest was piqued, at us being able to think outside of the box and to go towards what other territories in the world are already looking at, exploration of the seabed. And it was noticeable that in about 19 countries I saw, in the Caribbean there were 2, Jamaica and Cuba. And this presents us, again, with an opportunity to create new jobs for new income streams, and also to help with innovation and technology, because they're talking about mining in this area, in the sea. But the truth is, they're not mining as we know it in terms of drilling. What the science and the scientists are saying is more about harvesting, where you have these robots that have already started trials that sweep the ocean bed and pick up all of these, what they call nodules, which have in things like nickel, cobalt, copper, and manganese. And these are things that we're using for green technologies to make the laptops, the batteries for storage, and all of these other things. So Barbados now, and this government, has been, in my mind, very proactive in being able to get involved and put legislation and different things in place to take advantage of this. One of the interesting things is, while I was doing the research, is that the International Seabed Authority, which is responsible for making the legislation and the different things like that to govern how you do this mining, they themselves have not had any legislation. And Barbados has put things in place already. So I believe, Madam President, that this is one area where we as Barbadians should be extremely proud that for the very first time in a long time, that a Caribbean country has been more proactive than reactive, which is the norm for us. And so I want Barbadians to appreciate that in this lies opportunities, like I said before, for the creation of new jobs, to help stimulate innovation, and to also make use of minerals and other things within our waters that we haven't done in the past. And with those few words, I'm obliged to you.
Thank you very much. So Senator Knight, before you speak, I really just want to again thank all those people who continue to make very kind remarks in their interventions. Senator Knight.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I believe that we've had a very fulsome discussion with a number of points that have been made. In particular, the last 2 speakers identified a number of opportunities that the bill opens up. Senator King would have spoken about employment and innovation, which are real aspects, particularly for the new world that we are living in and that is shaping up. And that is, again, one of the hallmarks of having comprehensive legislation, as such as this one, that looks at a new area that previously, I think that we've all agreed in the chamber, was one that we hadn't looked at before and hadn't valued before. There were some specific questions that were raised, Madam President. I can't attempt within this sitting. Somebody said that perhaps each of the sections require a separate day for debate, and perhaps the breadth of the questions would also then require more fulsome discussion. But just to respond to a couple of things. So the first major one, Madam President, was around giving a report on the state of the fire at the archives and what was the status and what has been done to date in relation to that. So I want to indicate that come January, the Division of Culture will be providing a full report card to the country. We will be inviting the media as well to be on location at the new site at Newton, which will house a Category 5 resistant facility I was very pleased the other day to actually see the work that is already being done on that. I was being very conservative and saying, oh, by the end of 2025, Export Barbados is saying, no, ma'am, you know, they will bring it home before that. But that we will have, for the first time ever, I'm just going to say within the Caribbean, but I believe even broader than that, we will have a fully outfitted facility for an archives that can withstand guaranteed, well, not guaranteed, I shouldn't say so in the context of the climate crisis, but that the materials and the engineering are up to a Category 5 resistant level for our archives. In the meantime, and I will just very briefly, just 4 points or so just in terms of what has been happening. In the meantime, the records are being moved to another secure facility, and I have the approval from the fire service, or the fire service certification, that facility that we're moving the records to currently temporarily until we move to the Newton facility is also as well certified at the very highest level from the Barbados Fire Service. We hired an independent investigative team out of St. Kitts in order to make sure that we did a full due diligence on the fire. That team would have indicated that there was no malfeasance, there was no interference, there was no individual or personal or any kind of untoward act for the fire, that it was, again, due to the lightning strike, and that was confirmed by them. And they also made several recommendations that we are implementing. I'll speak to 4 of those major recommendations, which will provide you with an update of what is happening. So one of them, they asked us to just make sure that we have an instantaneous kind of call to the Barbados Fire Service. And by Friday, right now, we have technicians that are at the archives on site, and they're doing several things, and that is one of those things, making sure that we have that trigger that goes directly to the Barbados Fire Service. They're also upgrading the CCTV camera facilities. They're also upgrading the access controls. Those access controls will be upgraded by December 29th, CCTV, and as I said, the Fire Service automatic trigger by Friday of this week. We already as well had moved to make sure that we strengthen the security on site as well by bringing in a private security firm that will supplement the guard security people that were already on site as well. We have moved to install lightning rods and make sure new lightning rods on all of the buildings now of the Archives Department again. So again, to mitigate as much as we can, noting, I must say, that there was an existing lightning rod on the building that was struck. I just want to note that. So again, we can put in as much mitigation as we can, but when you have instances such as we did in relation to the lightning strike, things can still occur. So we are in the process of making sure that we do that. In relation to the closure or non-closure of the archives has been functioning, it has been doing community outreach. It actually held a genealogy workshop quite recently as we celebrated Shirley Chisholm on site, where the Barbadian public was on site to receive services. It is not, however, open to the public for research, only because the salvage operations only stopped at the end of the first week of December. And those salvage operations were about seeing what it is that we can literally salvage from the fire. So that effort has been ongoing. And as you can imagine, with equipment and people, etc., still using that area as a salvage site, it would have been difficult then to also have the public coming into the space. So now that is done. And as we continue to move the records, we will look towards the full reopening, because it is still operating. Staff are still there. Like I said, genealogy workshops are going. The staff are still going out to do visits, etc. But we will have it fully open. So, Madam President, like I said, we will do a fulsome review. Just in general, I want to a fulsome review of of the archives, fulsome account for the public in relation to the archives in January. Madam President, there has been a lot of discussion in relation to how do we make sure that people understand and can benefit from the opportunities within this bill. How do we make sure that fishing communities are able to engage? How do we make sure that there are benefit and active participants and that we value the traditional knowledge? Madam President, I just want to again reflect for everyone. I would have mentioned it in my presentation. One, at section 11, the Maritime Heritage Tourism Development Plan. So that the expectation is that in consultation with all of the necessary stakeholders, as I would have indicated, that it is to be done in collaboration, in consultation with government, non-governmental stakeholders, private sector, and other agencies with an interest in matters pertaining to the Maritime Heritage Development Plan. So some of the things, and I think one of the honourable senators would have indicated is a work in progress, is that it's supposed to be based on a consultative process that will then develop the roadmap for full implementation and rollout as well. And I want, again, even though I did point to some of the areas, want to, again, in response to some of the questions in particular by Senator Worrell when he talked about promotion of more leisure activities, to note, again, that at section 11(2)(d), one of the elements of that Heritage Tourism Development Plan is to promote leisure, business, and other forms of heritage tourism. We talked about, there were questions about how do we kind of create linkages as well at E. One of the components of that Heritage Tourism Development Plan is to strengthen the linkages between tourism, culture, shipping, fisheries, marine biotechnology, and other sectors that directly and indirectly participate and contribute. And as well, at H, harmonize where appropriate formalities, administrative and documentary requirements. It talks about at K, somebody talks about planning, integrate sustainable physical planning components to support the development and operationalization of facilities, etc. So that, like I said, the Maritime Heritage Tourism Development Plan, which will be done in consultation with stakeholders, will provide the framework for the long-term implementation and build-out. And that will then lead, Madam President, to the Barbados Marine Heritage Tourism Development Program. So that the legislation anticipates that clearly all of the elements will not be able to be fully fleshed out, but that we follow a process of consultation based on what is here and then to develop a program for implementation. Madam President, there was a question raised just about research and the extent to which we are asking everybody to register for research, including perhaps students coming up from the university. So, Madam President, I understand the concern, but I want to identify as well. Senator Dr. Crystal Drakes made a document of the House, a research that she said that most likely the government would not have been aware of. Right? The government would not have been aware of. What the legislation is trying to do is to make sure that we can actually be able to have an account of all of that research that has taken place, whether it's done by university students or wherever, that we have now a full register that allows us to be able to see all of the valuable work that is being done by others, and that can contribute to the knowledge and then the further build out, Madam President, of the sector. So while I understand that there is a challenge, it does allow us to be able then to have a fulsome then list of what is happening within the area of maritime heritage. Again, like I said, that can then further contribute. And this is important because very often we do not have all of the knowledge bases. And work is going on by different people in different areas that you do not know of, that can contribute, and that can be valuable. So while I appreciate, as you said, we do not want to have restrictions that will bog down the process, I think that we also as well need to have a balance in terms of the higher objective. And in this instance, the higher objective is to make sure, again, that we have and we're able to collect that body of work and then to see what is happening within the sector and what research then can be leveraged for ongoing work. Madam President, I wanted to respond because I think that there was a lot of concern just in relation to coral restoration. We talked about it on the West Coast, but just in general as well. To know that the government does have a coral restoration project. There's a project with UWI, I think, and a number of private entities. I think it's called Corall, C-O-R-A-L-L. And that has started, I believe, over 5 years ago. And that project as well is about recommitting the coral and growing coral as well to deal with some of the issues and the impact that we would have had on the West Coast and for future regeneration of the coral as well. So that this is taking up the attention of the government, and we understand the need to have a long-term trajectory to this and its level of importance. So I also wanted to be able to report on that. I also wanted to indicate that no, this is not related to the Depth for Nature swap in its entirety, and I think that the link was being made to the Depth for Nature swap, and then there was a reference to 55,000 an area that was supposed to be demarcated. And I want to be able to indicate to the Honourable Chamber that no decisions have been made relative to this. Right now, under the Marine Spatial Plan, there are ongoing discussions about the demarcation of those marine spatial areas. And out of that consultation, then you will have demarcation coming. But first, we are starting with consultation. First, we are going out to people. First, we are asking all of the critical stakeholders. First, as was indicated in this Honourable Chamber, we are speaking to fishing communities to find out and to understand how they will participate, what it is that they feel about this area, how it should be treated too, so that the government is not superimposing restrictions. But again, it would come from through consultation and then as well legislation that will appropriately regulate that. But again, starting with the Marine Spatial Plan, starting with consultation, and then moving on to the legislative process, Madam President. Madam President, I think that, again, I hope I've addressed the majority of the issues, again, in the context of even the Citizens Impact and Benefit Committee. And again, I draw to that section on the plan and the program that then is to be developed, again, as being the kind of mechanism that would allow, again, for more fulsome build-out of that particular clause as well. And as spoken to at the very beginning, the opportunities that have been identified by some of the other senators, as well as being important. I don't eat sea eggs, unfortunately. I know that there was some discussion about the, about the sea eggs and what is happening there. I'm a little bit, so everybody's looking at me, and so I'm going to look at you. I'm going to look at you, Madam President, because I'm seeing astonished looks across the chamber. So I apologize if I've offended few persons by my non-eating of the sea eggs. But I've eaten other things from the sea, just not the sea eggs. But also as well, I just wanted to again go to the point. We talked about the presence of the lighthouse Senator Maynard would have spoken to that and our need to be able to move quickly in order then to be able to address the erosion. And again, pointing to the fact that we've not had a legislative framework. We've not had it. And now we do have a legislative framework that adds to what we already understand to be the need to protect and to be able to preserve. Madam President, I think, though, that there is a consensus in the chamber about the importance of the bill, its comprehensiveness, the opportunities that can be derived from it, the need to make sure that we engage as the bill makes provision for our local communities, the need to understand that the first visitor is a local, the need to understand that nationally as well, that we need to elevate the value and appreciation for our cultural heritage. And that the bill, therefore, is a critical piece of our being able to do that. As Senator King would have said, this creates a benchmark for others to follow, and Barbados is paving the way in respect to this legislation and showing, again, the understanding and value that we place on cultural heritage as a broader context, but also as well on the marine cultural heritage. Madam Chair, again, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Madam President, I beg to move that Your Honour do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Senate is in committee.
Mr. Chairman, this bill is a pretty lengthy bill and requesting permission to call in part and clauses.
Permission granted.
Part 1, clauses 1 to 6.
Deputy President, I beg to move that Part 1, clauses 1 to 6 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 to 6 do now stand part. All those honourable senators in favour say aye. Aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 7 to 20.
Deputy President, I beg to move that Part 2, clauses 7 to 11 do now stand part. 20. Oh, to 20, sorry. Okay, 7 to 20 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 2, clauses 7 to 20 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 21 to 29.
Deputy President, I do beg that Part 3, clauses 21 to 29 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 3, clauses 21 to 29 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. All honourable senators against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 30 to 69.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that part 4, clauses 30 to 69 do now stand part.
The question is that clause 4, parts 30 to 69 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Yes or no? Please rise, I don't know. The ayes have it. Senator Dr. Drakes, could you explain to us which exactly you're voting no on?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to bring the Chamber's attention to Clause 42. I know that the Leader of Government Business outlined her rationale or the government's position as it relates to research permits for marine heritage research permits. However, I'd like us all to be very clear that what we're passing here today encompasses all and any research or data collected must have a research permit if it is in relation to marine heritage. In addition to that, under Clause 42, a person who contravenes subsection 1, which is in relation to that permit, is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of up to $100,000 or to imprisonment of 5 years or to both. I just want us to be clear that this is what we're passing today. There's no distinction about the type of research being done and with how the permit is then allocated based on the type of research. That is all I want to raise at this time. And to clarify that this bill, when passed, will be an umbrella for all research as it relates to maritime heritage, whether you are an 18-year-old at the Barbados Community College or whether you are a consultant working for an international development agency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator, for explaining your concern. I again will go to the vote, and the question was, the question is that Part 4, clauses 30 to 69 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 70 to 101.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 5, clauses 70 to 101 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 5, clauses 70 to 101 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 102 to 229.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 6, clauses 102 to 229 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 6, clauses 102 to 229 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 230 to 243.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 7, clauses 230 to 245 do now stand part. 243 do now stand part.
The The question is that Part 7, clauses 230 to 243 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be now the first schedule to the bill. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Fourth schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill.
The question is that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to Madam Honour, the President, the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to Madam Honour, the President, the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. All against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passing of one bill at committee.
Madam President, I beg to move that this bill now be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be now read a third time. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. All honourable senators against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Madam President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Marine and Underwater Heritage Act 2024.
The question is that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Marine and Underwater Heritage Act 2024. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Order number 8, ma'am. In the name of the Honourable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Tourism Development Amendment Bill 2024.
Before we go to the next item on the order paper, we have sort of broken what is developed as a tradition in the chamber, and that is to greet and recognize all visitors at the start of the sitting. We have had with us for the entire session today a young lady by the name of Paige Blackburn, who happens to be the daughter of Senator Chad Blackburn. Those of us who knew her as a little thing are surprised at how striking and tall a young lady she has become. but we are not at all surprised at how well she is doing academically and how she is performing to make Barbados proud in Geneva. We know her parents are giddy with excitement and joy over how well she is doing. She's a very attractive young lady. She has the genes of her mom, for which we're grateful. But we are happy that coming home for holiday, she's here until early January, that she is sufficiently interested in the matters of governance and the passage of legislation, that when many young people would have taken the opportunity coming home less than 48 hours to go out with friends and to catch up with relatives, she has come to the chamber and has spent the day with us to date. This is pretty impressive for a 12-year-old. Though today I said, but Paige, you're 15 by now, right? And she looked at me in shock. But she is so tall and so striking that she really has a much older look, and we know that she is really performing at the level of someone beyond her years. We pray God's continued blessing on her and her success and journey. And now we can go to the order paper.
Madam President, before we get to order number 8, we want to recommit to private members' business.
Thank you, Clark. Thank you, Mr. Clark. We will hear Senator Malalu.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to give notice of a resolution. The resolution reads, whereas under Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Cap 228 of the laws of Barbados, the state can acquire land for public purpose. And whereas under Section 3 of the said Act, the Minister is authorized to acquire lands for public purposes. And whereas the Constitution provides that no property shall be compulsorily acquired except by and under the authority of any written law. And whereas no claim for compensation under the Land Acquisition Act shall be admitted or entertained unless it is made in writing within 2 years of the publication of Section 5 notice in the Official Gazette. And whereas the present state of the law allows the compulsory acquisition to be completed without timely payment or none at all to the owner of the land. And whereas the law does not compel the Minister to give details of the public purpose. And whereas, in the interest of good governance and transparency, it is desirable that public purposes are more clearly defined in the legislation, be it resolved that the Land Acquisition Act be amended to reflect the following. A, that purposes are more clearly defined in the legislation. B, that compensation being offered is informed by a public and private valuation. C, payment of compensation should be completed within 3 months of the Section 5 notice. And D, that the title not be perfected until the compensation has been paid.
Thank you very much, Acting Deputy President. I believe, Clark, that this will now go on the order paper to be debated after the holiday season.
Well, because it's private members' business, when the government finds the time to do it all that. Right, so. Let's revert to public business. Order number 8, in the name of the Honorable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Tourism Development Amendment Bill 2024.
Senator Cummins, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, Madam Deputy, Madam President. I'm now not even sure what I'm calling you because we're used to calling you the Deputy President and Madam Chairman, but for the purposes of today's debate, you are the most honorable the President of the Senate, Acting President of the Senate, and I wish to join my own voice in convoluting all of those names and those titles together and congratulating you on your recent ascension to the highest honor that Barbados can afford a citizen of this nation. It is well deserved, and I think all of us agree with that. Oh, okay. But I want to get back to, very briefly, the business then that is before us, order number 8. It is a small amendment in principle to the Tourism Development Act, and it speaks specifically to the amendment to allow for the existing concessions under the Tourism Development Act to be applicable to renovations to villas. Now, the original Tourism Development Act, which has governed the way in which this country invests in the tourism sector, specifically with regard to hotels and to villas, which then constitute the accommodation sector of the country. This has been a major source of investment, and I don't think I need to say to anyone in this chamber that tourism has remained the major driver of the economy. It has remained the major driver of the generation of foreign exchange in the country by which we pay for goods and services. And we have seen in the most recent reports by the central bank, the governor of the central bank, that Barbados continues to benefit from a resurgence in the tourism sector post-COVID. And we have seen, as a consequence, increased airlift, increased cruise arrivals, and with those two things combined, an increase in the demand for accommodation. And the accommodation sector, we have seen increases in the occupancy rates of hotels, increases in the number of persons who are investing in private properties for rental as Airbnbs, and equally so, we are seeing the emergence of a booming and a thriving villa segment within the accommodation sector. Certainly, Mr. President, what we have seen in the tourism sector is that villa growth, the growth in the villa sector has almost over the last several years outstripped the growth in the hotel construction sector. And we've seen more rooms emerging in the villa segment than we have seen in the hotel sector. And so there is a basis on which this amendment is therefore being made to allow for villas 1, which is already in the legislation, villas to be constructed, but secondly, as we have heard on more than one occasion in the hotel sector, hotel plants, and we saw it during COVID when hotel plants were closed and had to be put back into service, and then you had to invest in the sector to make sure that you can keep them going and to invest in renovations. If you don't use something or after a time, in order to ensure that Barbados remains competitive and that accommodation remains fit for purpose in the class and the category that it has been marketing itself, that there is a need for renovation. And in the same way that we have invested historically under the TDAA for the renovation of hotel rooms after some time, equally so, this amendment, small amendment in the legislation, is now allowing for, it's a short amendment, I should say, a short amendment, but with a significant impact, is meant to invest in the renovation of the villa segment. And what is important about that is that you have to be able to meet people, visitors in this instance, and locals, many of whom rent villas, not just for their staycations, and those who go down on the West Coast to enjoy visitors who are coming from places like Trinidad for family parties and so on. Many of them are renting villas and not necessarily hotel rooms, but you're also seeing a number of locals renting villas for the weekend, for birthday parties, for showers, for weddings, for all kinds of activities where there are going to be a number of persons using the facilities. Barbados has a reputation for excellence in our tourism product, and one of the key drivers of the tourism sector at this point has been, one, an investment in renovation in our hotel plant, our existing hotel plant. I believe you heard the Honorable Minister of Tourism in the other place speak about the number of hotels that are either under construction or being built as we speak, and we can see many of them, especially along the South Coast. And equally so, we would have heard from the Senior Minister with responsibility for infrastructure and investment overall. You would have heard them speaking equally about the investment in new assets. And Sam North Castle, Wyndham, new hotel plant, I believe it has the largest number of rooms on island now. You've heard about the Elegant properties, the 5 or 7 hotels, how they're phasing the renovations to those properties to make sure that when Barbadians and visitors alike enjoy those properties, take their monies and rent those properties for all the purposes that I have described, that they are getting a world-class product, that the bathrooms are updated, the kitchens are updated, the ACs have been serviced and replaced, and in some instances now seeing them replaced with energy efficient units, for example, so that you're going to have an evolution over time of properties that are constantly being maintained, and we've spoken about that in terms of government buildings and other things, making sure that there is a maintenance program. In this instance, we are allowing for a renovation program to be provided under the TDAA. Now, this is not something that the government is doing on its own. It has come out of a consultative process with the stakeholders in the industry. The Honorable Minister in the other place has engaged with the tourism stakeholders in the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association and all of the other stakeholders to be able to identify all of the things that need to be made and put into place over time to service this segment of the market. And so I want to just spend a few moments very briefly to go through the process of how these approvals get done. One of the things that the government has navigated over an extended period of time, you have had, certainly I have served in a previous incarnation as a Minister of Tourism, and the notion of looking at the applications for new villa development or expansions of villas, and I want to give some definitions so we're clear on what we're speaking about. There are a number of approvals that typically you could have. In the first instance, when there's notice given, you buy a piece of land, you decide you want to put a small hotel or a villa on that property, you apply for interim approval. And that interim approval requires you to submit a couple of things. One, it establishes that you are intending to build a property that involves physical development or enhancement of an existing structure. At that initial and interim stage, only building supplies and materials can be accessed for the purpose of the TDAA. Then you have final approval of a tourism project. This is where there is a transitional or a bridging phase between the interim approval and the final license stage where you're given a license to operate. And then this is the stage where it goes up to cabinet. The cabinet looks at the recommendations of the technical officials in the ministry, having looked at what has been submitted by the developer, and then a recommendation is made to the cabinet that it meets the requirements. It is sent then to the office of the Attorney General, who then affixes his certificate that it is fit for purpose and in accordance with the law, and only then it comes up to cabinet. Cabinet will sign off, and then the final approval is given for that particular project. And then at the very end of the project, you now are operational. You are then being given the support and the exemptions that allow you to manage the day-to-day operations of the tourism product. And these items include appliances, furniture, sports and recreational equipment, and where applicable, in particular for the hotel products or for restaurants attached to hotel products, food and beverage is also provided. So in this instance, what is being proposed, quite simply, is to allow for the owners of villas, and I want to give a definition of what is qualified as a villa. It is a standalone property intended for hotel development with 3 bedrooms or more at a value of a minimum of $525,000 and above. And so you can get multi-million-dollar villas, multi-million-dollar villas, and in that instance, you also have the consequential impact on the domestic economy, the spillovers into the domestic economy. It generates employment. When COVID happened and people were uncomfortable in shared accommodation like hotels, the villa segment surged. People were a lot more comfortable, if they could afford it, staying in private accommodation like a villa. where they could control who came, who went, and it was just them and their family alone. The villa segment performed exceedingly well during that period for that purpose. And so the villa segment has been growing and keeping pace, if not exceeding the pace of growth in the hotel sector since COVID. And the expectation is that it will continue to grow. And I think for some of us, the notion that there are more villa rooms on this island than there are hotel rooms is actually a reality that we have been looking at in the sector over time. So, just very briefly, in terms of the level of investment that Barbados has seen in the villa segment, certainly between 2019, just before, at the start of COVID, and now in 2024, the expectation is that we have seen around $457.3 million in investment in this segment. We have seen over 684 new jobs added as a consequence of that. And when I talk about new jobs being added, when you have a villa and in the cabinet papers that go up, you typically will see to employ how many persons for each villa and what the kinds of jobs are that you will see. So you typically will have your butler services, you will have your gardening, you'll have your housekeeping, you'll have your chefs. Some of them are really high-end and they have mixologists and so on. So they have all kinds of skills, food supply. Then you have your connections to your local farmers, your local supermarkets. You're also able to see in a lot of instances when people come for weddings, you get your local seamstresses. The Welcome Stamp program heavily depended on the surges in the villa segment. We had a lot of people coming in that category, coming and spending money in Barbados, and they came and they brought their children. They put their children in school. They bought clothes. They had seamstresses. They had housekeepers. And so the connection between the villa segment and the tourism sector more broadly, but specifically for the purpose of today's debate and employment and economic activity locally is inextricable. And it is on this basis that the government has seen it fit to allow for Barbados's product to remain current, to remain fit for purpose, and to remain trendy, new, and attractive to visitors so we can continue to see an increase in our tourism arrivals. And with these few words, Madam President, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it. Senator Walters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. I too will wish to join with fellow senators. Although I did on a previous occasion, I did see you out, and I offer you congratulations. I think that that time, Alison Hines was on the stage, and I think I saw you doing a little something, right? but I did, no, she did it by herself. She did me. But I did offer you congratulations, and I wish to be on record as well, offer you congratulations on achieving the highest national honor for Barbados. Madam Deputy President, the leader of government business was quite short, and everyone is staring at me, hoping that I do the same, I assume. I must say that everybody looks lovely in their red. I say that because it is the Christmas season. I assume that it's... Someone's reminded me of the color of the floor of the foundation, the floor of the hall at Foundation School. But anyhow... Madam Deputy President, the amendment is a simple amendment, but in my mind it sends a strong message to where the priorities of the government lies. It seeks to create financial space and capacity for persons who will invest in business in Barbados, persons who will invest a certain amount of money into the country, and persons who are more than likely will be foreign, they will be non-nationals. So it does identify, although it's short, and I don't think that we would disagree to the concept of making sure that the tourism product is fresh, or is kept fresh, and that tourism is still our mainstay as it relates to how we earn, especially foreign exchange. But this whole concept of concessions is interesting, and it is also important for the government to use these opportunities to give updates on some of the things in the industry that we speak of, and in this instance, it is tourism. And if you remember, during COVID, there was a BEST program, the Barbados Employment and Sustainability Transformation Program, which offered concessions to the tourism industry. $300 million was what Barbados was told. We haven't had any recent updates. We know that it was supposed to assist in bringing persons from unemployment, because obviously with the airport shut down, etc., persons were at home, and we wanted to make sure that persons remain employed. To retrain and retool is what we were told that the money would be used for, as well as to keep the plant going. If everything is shut up, things will dry rot, etc. But we do not know today what is the status of the Barbados Employment and Sustainability Transformation Program, the BEST program. It is $300 million of taxpayers' money, and during that time, many felt that this was given to a group of persons who had the wherewithal or the capacity to not, even if they did not have the money in their banks, in their bank accounts, that they surely had property and other assets that they could leverage to at least keep them afloat, as with most other businesses in Barbados who were not afforded this benefit and this level of benefit in terms of concessions during that time. So I think the government owes it to the country to give an update on the BEST program. Tourism, we are being told that tourism is back, and we are almost or surpassing pre-COVID levels in 2024. And while it will not spend a lot of time on the arrival numbers, it has also been identified that we are getting more visitors from the US, and we're getting less visitors from the UK. What has not been elaborated on is the fact that we are earning less, although we are seeing more visitors because of that change as well on source markets. And that is something that, while the government continues to pursue more visitors and more aircraft landing in Barbados, it must carefully consider that it has ended up working harder to get back the same amount of money that we would earn previously if it doesn't focus on our source markets. So we cannot neglect our source markets that would have given us very good return for our investments. Persons in the UK stayed longer and they spent more.
On what do you raise?
Madam President, I rise on a point of elucidation, I guess. The good senator is indicating that we have more tourists in Barbados and that we are earning less money. I would like to know from the good senator what data he has to provide to us, because in my experience practicing in this area, I am seeing more tourists, and I see that the rate that the hotels and the villas are charging is higher than it was before, and my simple math would tell me that more people at higher rate equals more money has come. So if the senator has information that could help me to understand the point he's making, I would appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Senator. But for the benefit of all senators, one elucidates or rises on a point of elucidation of one's own speech. I think the honorable senator meant that you were misleading the House, and therefore he was rising on a point of order. I'm assuming that that is, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but I'm assuming that that was his intention. So he had nothing to elucidate. You will now have to determine.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The source of the information is the Central Bank reports of Barbados. And
on this matter, I really would wish to make a ruling because it has happened more than once where I've asked for specificity when information is just being dropped and somebody says, oh, it is X report. They don't quote the specific report. They give no details of the data. So really, for a sense of being discipline and order to the House and bringing debate within the four corners of the rules, I am, when I'm in the chair, going to be asking for people to give information and data that is cited properly for the basis of the record. Otherwise, you could just make it up and say it is, not you personally, of course, no senator here would ever do that.
thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, Deputy President. The Central Bank report of 2023 shows that we earned, I do not have the exact figure, I am for the benefit of Senator Malalou, shows that Barbados, when compared to the Central Bank report of 2018, the contribution of tourism to the gross domestic product is less in 2023 than it was in 2018. So, Madam President, that is how we frame the contributions to tourism in terms of earning less compared to earning more pre-COVID.
Thank you, Senator. For my rule, it would still not be specific enough because to say the report of 2023 doesn't really say very much. But I'm just putting the House on notice that in the future, if I'm on the chair, I am going to ask all sides to be specific because the rules do require it. Prior to us going electronic, you would have to bring data, make the reports a copy, make a copy of the whatever data, whatever material you're using, a document of the House and so on. We've become very slack in relation to it, and I just want to reimpose a standard. I'm suggesting to you that in the future, that level of, that lack of specificity would not satisfy me, but the other side that is debating will have to determine whether they would want to engage with you on it. I'm just setting the rule for the standard that I will be applying across the board. Please continue, Senator, and you will get your time.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. Well, all I'm saying, Madam Deputy President, is that they asked for a source, and that is the source, right? Senator Malalou said that he's seeing people around, and they feel as though he feels spending more money. So that does not, where's the source for that? So this is not to be adversarial on the issue, but the reality is that the BEST program offered a concession of $300 million, and Barbados would like to know what is the update on the $300 million concession. They said that the numbers are up for tourism. So are the hotels that participated? The last update I am aware of was in the budget of 2022, where they said 50 companies benefited from the concession or from the pool of resources made available to them, and 2,142 workers benefited from the program at that time. So it is not unreasonable to ask for an update and ask for how is the repayment of those funds scheduled or likely to happen so that taxpayers can get the much needed benefit from the return of those finances. You must also be reminded, Madam Deputy President, that the government has to find or source in excess of $300 million to fund its expenditure for the rest of the year. I'm not sure if these chamber needs me to provide a source for that, but I'm saying to you that $300 million is a lot of money. We are in a position where we're running almost $1 billion deficit every year. So it is not unreasonable for taxpayers who have to pay these deficits to ask questions or to be updated on the status of monies that have been lent to business sectors as it relates to repayment and putting those monies back to work on behalf of the citizens of the country.
You've been here 10 years, 10 worse years.
Madam President, here was so peaceful for the whole day. But Madam President, the hotels got the concessions back during COVID. In the crisis, in a time of crisis, the hotels were given support. The industry was at risk. And I think Barbadians understood that. I'm not sure if because everybody was so interested in dealing with their own financial situations in terms of unemployment and earnings, etc., that they didn't really focus on the quantum of that support. But here we have a situation where within our fishing industry, we have a crisis as well. We have a crisis where our fishing industry was decimated by a natural disaster. And we have a situation where, in my view, the support has been lacking from the government. We have a situation, the reality of it is that you open in the press, persons in that sector are still crying out for help. And we hear the government's response is that fill out the application, bring in the ID card, do this, do that, etc. The big point is, Madam Deputy President, is that you have offered for a sector in problems during COVID, you've offered $300 million to support that industry. In 2024, a sector in crisis because of a natural disaster, you are happy to say that you have given us $4 million. An industry, Madam Deputy President. So I'm saying to you, Madam, so it is okay to give concessions and to have provisions for the villa owners, etc. But, Madam Deputy President, this $4 million, the $4 million is, as far as I'm aware, is largely donations. It is not even government expenditure. It is money that has been donated to the government and by businesses to help with the industry. But the government took out $300 million of taxpayers' money, give it to a sector, and can't find $10 million to help people. That is my point, Madam Deputy Speaker. Because
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm right on a point of order because I believe again that the Honourable Senator is misleading the House in terms of his characterization of the support that government has given to the sector, and to compare the support that government would have given during COVID, which lasted for how long? Anybody want to remind me? How long was COVID? 2+ years, to the support that government would have given in an event for Barrel, in which that support is specific to the boat owners, to captains, and to vendors, is really a poor characterization and perhaps not reflective, right? I also as well want to note that we should perhaps take into consideration, and we can come to the numbers, but outside of that support, the government provides subsidized ice to the markets, subsidized fish vendor market space rental, subsidized lockers, subsidized hauler operation, backfield fuel, vessel lifting rebate, duty-free concessions on gear and equipment, annual maintenance subsidies, free registration of vessels, free fishing vessel inspectors, and free registration. So while, Madam President, the government and the support that the government is giving to the fishing sector in the context of Beryl recognizes its responsibility as a government to support the fishing sector, and to do it in a way that is fulsome. So we are not only saying we will give this support that is being provided, but please don't forget, Madam President, as well, that the government is also as well. It's a point of order. Because no. I'm providing a fulsome area. I'm providing a fulsome response.
Senator, order, please. Only the chair can rule on what is a speech versus what is a point of order. Where will the speech end?
Madam Deputy President,
Senator Walters, please.
This is not funny at all. The senator is yet to identify how I am misleading the House. I said, and I'll repeat, $4 million of money that has been donated to the government of Barbados to provide at the disposal of the fishing industry is what the government used. They have taken $300 million of taxpayers' money to prop up the tourism industry. The assets that the people in the fishing industry had were destroyed. The assets during COVID still remain today. They have nothing to leverage on. Madam Deputy President, the point I am making is that it is okay to offer sectors concessions, but you have to be fair. This is an industry that we are speaking about. And I'm saying to you, the government has not put enough support and has people running around asking for $1,500, front page of the newspaper, begging. We hear Senator Mayor now talking about how dead the fishing complexes are. That is the reality. And we are here passing a bill that will allow persons that are investing over $500,000 concessions. Madam Deputy President, there's another set of people in this country that have not had concessions. And those people are the ordinary people in this country who got to go and put gas in their vehicles or diesel. And they did not have any concessions for the last 15 months. Last 15 months, Madam Deputy President, they were asked to pay some of the highest prices at the pump, $4.22 per litre. For 15 years, although all indications were that the price of oil in the international market since September 2023 has reduced and was reduced. Bajans would like some transparency on this issue. It is not over, Madam President. It's not good enough to come a week and a half before Christmas to drop the price by 34 cents. I think that Barbadians are going to just sit down and say, hip, hip, hooray, thank you, Barbados Labour Party. It doesn't work that way. They have grown accustomed that when the price goes up, and they were warned in the statement from the Government Information Service that the prices, when the prices change, if it was to go up, that they will have to pay an increase. So they expect that if the prices come down, they should benefit as well. So, Madam President, Deputy President, we don't get any information coming out from the Minister of Energy who sits in this chamber at all on this issue. So we are left to make our own assumptions and calculations. And since that information broke a few days ago, the question that has been asked by consumers in Barbados is, how much do you think that the Barbados government, who is being managed by the Barbados Labour Party, has made by not reducing the price at the pump? That's a big question. You're going to want a source for this, Madam Deputy President. I apologize, Madam Deputy President.
Pardon?
I apologize. I apologize, Madam Deputy President.
I'm very glad, because I did allow you a lot of latitude. You came back to the matter of this donation without citing where the donation came from, justifying whether it was a donation or not. I gave you tremendous latitude. And I really want senators to understand, when I am sitting over there, you can engage with me vigorously, because I am not frightened to pull my sword on you. But my lingual sword, that is. However, when I'm in the chair, you will treat the chair with the courtesy that the chair deserves, because I will follow the rules. I will treat you with the utmost courtesy, and nobody can say that I am biased in the way that I apply the rules. I am fair to everybody. I give latitude, I allow people to make their points, I support them. I am very, very fair. So these backhand asides that people make as if I am not in the chair, not gonna live with it.
I apologize, Madam
Continue,
Deputy
Senator.
Speaker.
I look forward to your going toward your conclusion.
Yes. And you know that I'm a respectable young man. Do not let them rile you up, ma'am.
No, please. They are not at all riling me up. It was you with your little backhand remark that riled me up. I still want to thank you for being the first member of the Democratic Labour Party to congratulate me on my honor. I thought you were going to be the first and last, but you were not. I have been overwhelmed by the kindness. And just for the record, let it be known that we were at Soca Gold on Independence Night, not together.
Madam Deputy Speaker, oh my dear. Bajans want to know how much money. You know, the Prime Minister's on record saying she wanted money. She did it this. She wanted money. They want to know how much money. And the Minister of Energy is silent on the issue. And we are left to make our own conclusions, assumptions, calculations. Madam Deputy President, I estimate, based on the current reduction, that the government of Barbados extracted between $41 million and $45 million out of the pockets of consumers in this country.
Madam President, I rise on a point of order. I think the Honourable Senator has been prompting me to rise on this point of order for a long time, but I'm a patient woman, and so I've waited. The Honourable Senator is misleading the House, and grossly so. The Honourable Senator does not have access to the fact that Barbados would have paid X amount for oil prices over what period of time. You do not have, the Honourable Senator does not have access to the fact that Barbados does not hedge on the international markets, and so we are subjected to the vagaries. The Honourable Senator has not taken into consideration and has not had access to the contracting in instances where we have had to take spot prices for fuel products on the basis of some of the same hurricanes that we're speaking about, in instances where we could not get supplies from where we would traditionally get them. And so in the absence of that, the accusation of any baseline to draw from, the accusation that we have extracted any number $1, $2, 41 million, or any part thereof is a gross misrepresentation of the fact, and it is a reach on behalf of the honorable senator to score cheap political points, and I reject it.
Let me also say to the senator, please, you began speaking at 4:22. Because you spent 2 minutes being kind to me, I didn't start to record your speech until 4:27. You will look at the clock and be guided accordingly.
Yes, I do. I have, Madam
always
Deputy
forget
President,
that.
you're not being nice to me.
Sorry?
You're not being nice to me.
I don't know, I am being kind, I'm just being forgetful.
You're being forgetful?
Yes. Or
But
perhaps...
I have much more than 5 minutes. Madam Deputy President, the government of Barbados is working on behalf of the thousands of people that reside here, not on behalf of themselves. They deserve accountability and transparency for all transactions that the government engages in. This government pledged to be transparent. Madam Deputy President, I am sticking with my estimation, and the government is free to respond with accurate numbers that they want put on the table, Madam Deputy President. And my baseline is I have referred to the 2023 annual report of the Barbados National Oil Company Limited. And I have pulled the annual volumes for last year, which is the most recent information that we have. 2023. I want to annualize the volumes that are imported on behalf of the consumers. We sell what we buy to the consumers. And based on that, I extrapolated that number into 15 months. And I applied the discount of 34 cents per liter in the case of gasoline, and 15 cents per liter in the case of diesel. I was generous with the government. Madam Deputy President, when I did the calculation, it came out to $63.2 million. I discounted it. Because I know that the drop didn't just happen like that, and it was not from day one. It was consistently going down, and it was up and down. There were variations in the prices. So I discounted it. But it's $63.2 million that I discounted to $41 million. Those are the estimates that I want to provide to Barbados. The government is free to challenge that with the accurate information if they think I'm inaccurate. But those are the government has extracted this amount of money, $41 million from taxpayers in this country. Where's the concession? Where's the concession? Madam Deputy President, the realities are that the people of this country have been asked numerous times. They have given the concessions to the government. The people in this country have been giving the concessions to the government, and the government is giving concessions to the persons who have the money to invest. Madam President, I'm looking for my notes because I got sources. Oh, I have it here. The program, Madam Deputy President, restructured $7 billion in debt. What is the debt today? As per the Central Bank report of September 2024, $7 billion. Cost taxpayers, $7 billion US dollars. Cost taxpayers $54 million up front. And it also costs the workers of this country $1.3 billion per NAS, pensions $209 million, credit unions got hit for $40.2 million, Madam President. The people of this country have been giving the concessions to the government. And the government is giving the concessions to the persons who have $575,000 to invest. Million to invest. Madam Deputy President, the asides.
Don't worry, you're shouting hard enough for me to hear you.
That's the passion, I apologize. Madam Deputy President, there are other issues in tourism that are deserving of a conversation with Barbadians. The Grantley Adams International Airport. What is happening at the airport seems to be a secret to Barbados. Yes, everything is a secret, but the government act on behalf of the people. There should not be any secrets. We have no idea on the real details of any pending transactions to sell or lease or partner with foreign investors for the airport. Outside of COVID, the airport has been a profitable operation. It has been, based on what somebody had asked Madam Deputy President. The Grantley Adams International Airport financials statements, audited financial statements. In 2019, March 2019, the net cash from operating activities, $29.5 million. In 2018, net cash from operating activities, $22.7 million. And I think I have a current one here as well. In 2020, it is profitable pre-COVID. That's the point I'm making. Outside of COVID, it is a profitable operation. We have a good tourism product across both governments. The LP being better, but we have a reasonable tourism product. But why would you go into these arrangements that take away control and management of our assets that are working for us already, that have the capacity, the financial capacity to repay the loans, that can go and get a loan and pay back, can get managers to come and manage different developmental things that might be happening in the area. But the point is, I don't think that enough information is put out there for Barbadians to understand what is going to happen at the airport, not only development, but what it's going to cost us, given where we are with this profitability already. Madam Deputy President, the tourism product and the competitive nature of the tourism product is that we have neighboring countries who are doing the same as we are. They have brand name hotels, they have beautiful beaches, they have excellent hospitality. We as a country have to make sure that we are creating a diverse product, and a diverse product that includes local. We hear about community tourism. But I say that to make the point that we have to ensure that we are not widening the financial gap from expatriates and locals. The gap between expatriates and locals as it relates to investment, because our concessions are being offered for major developments and costly developments, over $500,000 in development, and multi-million dollar projects. When you look around Barbados, there are a lot of derelict buildings and homes that we can develop as part of our tourism product as well, that a homeowner can develop and put that in the Airbnb as well. We can improve our stock and include our people at the same time. Where is the consideration for that type of concession? Concession for a homeowner who has a property that, in Bajan terms, is run down, could do with some upgrades, and they have also a business opportunity to turn that into a tourism product, accommodation product, and they can earn some income too, and we can also start to attract another type of traveler to the country, one that is probably looking for a more affordable accommodation and a different experience. So the concessions concept is fine, but we have to make sure that we're taking care of our people and giving locals opportunities that they can afford. That they can afford. So the opportunity has to be there that we can empower our own people. We can empower them. We can offer incentives for them to turn their accommodations into Airbnb, get the concessions on their places, on the upgrades. They can earn a living, and they can be part of the economic pie of this country. Madam Deputy Speaker, Deputy President, sorry. When a tourist comes to the country, we have to feed them. Where are the concessions for our farmers? They are part of the tourism product because we have to feed the tourists. We have to feed the visitors. You don't invite people to their house and they've got nothing to offer them. Where are the concessions for the agricultural sector? And there are no points of order because there are no concessions granted. There are no concessions granted to the agricultural sector. But again, Madam Deputy President, the farmers also give government a concession too, because they were asked to move, to pay more for water. Their major input, Madam President, the major input, they were asked to move from 60 cents per cubic meter to $1.80 per cubic meter, plus a garbage and sewage tax, Madam Deputy President. But they are part, I am bringing it to this chamber, that they are part of the tourism product because they don't invite people to your house, to your home, Barbados, and then the most right, hungry, can't get nothing to eat. And I'm speaking so that you can understand and see the picture of a hungry tourist in the hotel. We have to feed them. So where are the concessions for the farmers? Madam President, Deputy President, I repeat, the people of this country have given concessions plentiful to this government since 2018. And the government is taking those concessions and providing concessions, trying to get people to invest in this country. But why do we focus on the tourism product, Madam Deputy President? Because we want to earn foreign exchange. Because we import almost everything in Barbados. But the foreign exchange issue is being worsened by this government. So, while we have to do everything to increase tourism and increase our foreign exchange earning capacity, they're also making it more difficult because they are increasing the capacity for us to repay or pay for goods and to repay debt. Because what I'm saying, Madam President, is that we move a situation where in 2018, during the BERT program, Madam Deputy President, we wrote off debt, and then, since then, we have transitioned where we are getting more foreign debt than local debt. So the foreign debt is increasing, and if it is increasing, it means that we have to find more US currency to pay the debt. So we are making, the government has made the foreign exchange situation more difficult. And we continue to see the government and the media smiling and signing these loans away. But they are worsening the position, so now they have to grab at almost everything to try.
What do you raise?
On the point of order, Madam President.
And what is your point of order?
Madam President, I want to clear up the fact and to rebut the assertion that the government is making the foreign reserve position worse. That is totally untrue. As a matter of fact, Madam President, it is the highest in the history in a post-independent nation called Barbados. It now stands at $3.9 billion US, compared to when we came to office in 2018 at $400 million US after the Democratic Labour Party wrecked this country. Please speak the truth, and please apologize to the country for not bringing the truth.
Madam Deputy President, the government has about 2 or 3 things that they parade about, and reserves is one. I did not say reserves. I said debt. The Central Bank of Barbados report, Madam Deputy President, of September 2024. The external debt of the country is $5.6 billion. In 2017, Madam Deputy President, the external debt of the country was $2.8 billion. It multiplied by 2. They are making the foreign exchange situation worse because they're increasing the foreign debt, Madam Deputy President.
Madam President, I raise on a point of order. The debt situation in Barbados is not only not worse, it is better off. When we came to office in 2018, it was a situation where the debt to GDP ratio stood at 165% to the GDP. It is now at 105% to GDP. It is coming down. And based on all indicators from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Finance, we are expected, based on where we're headed, that in 2025, all things being equal, Madam President, it will come down to double-digit figures. So to say to the country that the country is worse off with respect to the debt position is not only untrue, but is the cheap politics now is not, Bajans can see past that. And we have to, in this debate and in public life, speak the truth. I understand that economic prudence and Democratic Labour Party does not go into the same sentence, but you must not mislead the public with these things. The debt position in Barbados is now better off, Madam President. And I would only encourage the member to speak the truth. And he must not be misguided by those who was part of an administration in 2018 who wrecked this economy. Senator World would know, he was a part of it.
I just have one concern. I would prefer for us to say, to encourage members to be accurate. Because when we say that, ask them to speak the truth, then we are accusing honorable members of lying. The public will make judgments as to whether they're telling the truth or not, but you can urge them to be accurate. Senator Walters, please.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I am at a loss. I am at a loss because when, Madam Deputy, no, listen. Madam Deputy Speaker, when I make a statement, they ask for a source. Before you ask for a source, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have quoted from a source. And they still want the information to be accurate. They don't believe the source. The source is the Central Bank of Barbados report of September 2024. The challenge that the Senator Blackman has is that he's not understanding what I'm saying. I am saying that we have made our foreign exchange position worse because we have to find more US dollars now to service our debt. And so he's focusing on the quantum of debt, which, by the way, was $14 billion in 2018, and is $14 billion in 2024.
With a large economy.
So they are making the situation with the foreign exchange worse for Barbados. Madam Deputy President. Madam Deputy President, the last area that I wish to focus on, 5 minutes, Madam Deputy President, is the regathering concept. Who is gathering, Madam Deputy President? Bajans, visitors, the diaspora, the BLP. Who? Bajans would like to understand this regathering initiative. How much is it going to cost the taxpayers of this country, or what are the likely benefits? We heard the Minister of Tourism spoke about the regathering in the press. It was launched I think it was launched in London in November 5th to 7th in the World Traffic Market. We heard the Minister of Culture speak on the regathering as well. Who is responsible? Is it a BTMI project? Is it a National Cultural Foundation project? Is it, what is it, and where is the money coming from to hold picnics and fetes and karaoke's? Madam Deputy President, this is taxpayers' money. Where is the money coming from when we, as a country, are asked or being told that the government has to look for over $300 million to fill a deficit of expenditure? So, Madam Deputy President, what will it cost taxpayers? Who is responsible? Is it the Ministry of Culture? Is it the Ministry of Tourism? Is it the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade? Because everybody seems to have a piece. It's like a political pillow. It's like a pillow. You know what pillow? Everything's a mix-up. Everything's a mix-up and beer confusion. You can't, beer confusion. But Madam President, these are, I don't have enough time to go into some other notes I have, but these are critical conversations relating to tourism. And it is not fair to gloss over this concession bill without addressing some of these key things I have raised on behalf of the people of Barbados. In closing, Madam Deputy President, I want to wish, on behalf of the Democratic Party Barbadians, all the best for the holidays. No, but I have to depart. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas and all the best for the new year. And on behalf of the people of Barbados, we beg for the government to give concessions in the new year to the people of Barbados. They need the ease. They are not just crying out for crying out's sake. You heard the organization that gives the hampers and stuff like that. No. There's an organization that, the Red Cross, Madam Deputy President, talk about reaching 4,000 families, and that was not enough, and that they needed more. The Salvation Army. Thank you, Senator Parrish. Barbadians are crying out for help, and I think the government needs to shift some focus onto the people of Barbados. I know investment is important, and we need investment, but we also need to make sure that our people are taken care of, and that we're not squeezing every ounce out of them. And with these words, I'm obliged, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. Speakers, please. Senator Maynard.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'm going to be brief. While I congratulated you earlier on your award, your national award, I do believe that the highest national honor awarded by this country is National Hero. And I think that we should, in this chamber, not make incorrect statement on such things. And so I therefore wish to correct the previous statements that you were awarded the highest honor. You have not yet been given the highest honor, ma'am. I also wish to make two comments. Farmers in this country get large numbers of concessions. Senator Walker, like myself, can attest to that. There's a long list of concessions given to farmers. I will not bore the chamber by listing all of them. They include tractors and fencing and long lists, so farmers are given many concessions. But I wish to defend the concessions to the fisher folk. I do not think it is the right thing to make it sound as though the fisher folk or the fishing industry is treated specially. We all, I would like to believe, pay taxes on our earnings, and the fisher folk and the fishing industry, I believe, do pay its fair share of taxes. I say that with a smile. But the government provides subsidies on fuels, repairs to boats, paint, batteries, and lubricants. But I think that it is important that we recognize that probably one of the biggest concessions given by the government to the fishing industry was the installation of ice machines in the fisheries complexes. Prior to that, I think that there was a lot of wastage and there was instability in pricing. And the provision of ice allowed boats of a larger size that were probably more commercially viable to be built, and they could stay out for longer periods of time. And without such facilities and such concessions, the tuna that we market that never comes to Barbados would not be available to us. And that's the extent of my contribution, ma'am. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Other speeches, please. Senator Mamadou.
Thank you, Madam President. I have to be very efficient with my time this evening, because if I was to actually attempt to address all of the inaccuracies that I heard in the debate from the other place with regards to the villa industry that came from, I believe, I heard it from the leader of the opposition there. And what I believe to be further inaccuracies, using the correct word, that I've heard today in this chamber, I would not actually use my time to make the points that I wanted to make on this bill. I am instead going to attempt to share with this chamber and perhaps to help Senator Walters and others, maybe who are listening, by giving the accurate information about villas in Barbados. And in order to provide a reference for how I might know this, I would like to share with the chamber that for the last 25 years, I have operated in this business. I manage villas, employ people in villas. I've been on the BHTA board and have dealt with the legislation that looks after villas. I've been involved in the legislation that is being dealt with today, some of the, how it could be made better, some of the areas where it still needs to be improved. I have a background in it, Madam President. I have specialist knowledge. Thank you for that. I will say to you that before my 27 years, my father was a pioneer in this industry, still alive, 70 years later, and still from time to time managing a villa or two at his 91 years old. So let me start by saying how important it is for the renovations, this small word, to have been added, and to say to the government of Barbados, because I am an independent senator, and many of you have heard me, when I have something to say, whether it be good or bad on either side, as an independent, I can do so. It is my free will to do so. This particular one has my complete support, and I shall tell you why. If you look at the hotel stock in Barbados today, I heard Senator Walters refer to looking at the other islands around us who all have the same sand and the sea and the sun. You're absolutely correct, Senator Walters. And I hope I'm not shouting, but I'm in fact just being passionate about this subject. You're absolutely correct, but you know what distinguishes Barbados from all of these other islands is our villas. You will not find villas like what you have in Barbados in any of these other islands. The only other place you can find anything of similarity is in St. Bart's. You can find in little pockets in the Bahamas, you can find some villas like there as well. But St. Lucia, Grenada, they top out at our South Coast prices. They don't touch our West Coast prices of villas. It's a different market. It's a niche that Barbados has developed. And while our hotel stock has been aging, our villa stock, because of the TDA legislation and other things to do that we have in this country, Madam President, has been flourishing. And I want to say to you that when it flourishes, don't think that it is, and I'm going to use the words that were used, which I abhor, that it's the foreigners who are flourishing. It's not, that's not who's flourishing. It is the housekeepers, it is the cooks, it's the chefs, it's the gardeners, it's the painters, it's the cleaners, it's the security guards, it's the taxi men, it's the rental car companies, it's the beach vendors. I could go on and on and on as to who benefits from this. But what I wanted to share with you today in this chamber and share my knowledge is I'm going to say to you something that is a fact, God's fact. This is the truth. For 27 years that I've been managing villas, my company has never once remitted a dividend out of Barbados to any villa owner for a profitable villa that they run in Barbados. Money does not leave. Every cent is reinvested in the villa itself. In fact, the vast majority of these villas are unprofitable. Every month they send money in. They send money in to pay the same salaries for the staff. Now, I want you to understand, Madam President, that they send US dollars or sterling or some hard currency. No one sends us Barbados dollars or Guyanese dollars. They send foreign exchange to supplement the income that they might make from the rental of these villas. And they pay their salaries every month, they pay their land tax, they pay their insurance, they renovate, they maintain the utilities, everything that I talked about before comes in as foreign exchange to make up the gap between what they may have earned from the rental, which is paid in foreign exchange, and then the government gets the shared economy levy. It used to get the VAT, but now it's not vatable, so all of the VAT is a sunk cost in the villas, okay? So that all stays within the economy. And all of these villa owners, all of these villas from $525,000 on up, and the leader of government business, in speaking of describing the villa, did leave out some other characteristics to be qualified as a villa. One of them is how many people you must employ. It's not just the $525,000. You did, I apologize. I perhaps was getting too excited at that moment. So there's a minimum level of employment. There's a minimum amount of time that it must be available, and that is audited if it is not used. The importance of this villa sector, it seems very politically expedient, it seems to some, to beat up and to talk about rich people and to talk about foreigners, etc. Fine, go right ahead. If you think there's cheap political points involved in that, go right ahead. That's not my game. The reality is, I see what this is worth. I see how the lives of these people are changed. I want to say another thing that perhaps I haven't said in here before. I said earlier, and I repeat, I have never once in 27 years seen a dollar from any of these villas go back out. I've only ever seen the money come in, and they have to supplement where it is not profitable, although they have the villa. The other thing that I want to say to you is that during COVID, because Senator Waters mentioned it, when the hotels shut down and laid off en masse, the villas that my company managed, the villas, I at that time was leading the villa sector group within the BHTA, and I am unaware of any villa owner who laid their staff off. In fact, what those villa owners did was they wrote to us and said, how can we look after our people? We know that we have no guests. We know the guests are not coming up. We know that we know that they're not going to get the tips. We know that they're not going to get anything. How can we help them? And these are the same villa owners that I heard in the other place get chastised, and I'm hearing it here again. So I stand today, and I stand passionately about it, because it is wrong. It is wrong to liken these two.
On what do you raise?
The Honourable Senator is misleading the House. Clearly, in my presentation, I did not chastise villa owners. I brought to the Chairman's attention the other priorities of the government that could be taken into consideration when it comes to concessions. I did not chastise the villa owners. I actually, in my wrap-up, I stated quite clearly that we do need investment and that we should support investment. And even in the other place, the leader of the opposition supported the building concept as well at the end of his speech. So I don't think that the Senator is misleading the House, suggesting that we have chastising villa owners.
Please continue, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. I did not see one villa owner ask for their staff to be laid off. I saw them looking after their staff. I saw them very sympathetic people. The other thing that I want to point out to this chamber is that through my position, my lucky position, I guess, with looking after many of these villa owners, I've seen the extent of the charity that many of these people extend to Barbados. I was the chairman of a COVID charity, and over $4 million was donated for people who could not even travel to Barbados at that time, but who wanted to look after and help those who could not at the time look after themselves because of COVID. That's what I've seen. And when I go to these villas, Madam President, I don't think I can remember today one villa that I don't go into that does not have a piece of local artwork, craftsmen. They support all of those local artists. And Senator King would be able to agree with me and say that when those villas, the first thing they want is some local artists to come in. And they're playing their music, and they even have all the local limbo or the fire. The extent that the villas support Barbados is significant. And I think it is wrong when we use them as a beaten toy, perhaps, to compare it with something else. I think the two things are not connected. I think it was mischievous to connect the two things. And I wanted to make it clear. As I said, I would not go into trying to address all the inaccuracies that I heard. I wanted instead to give you accurate information from a person who practices in this area. And those were the things that I wanted to tell you. One, all the money that comes in is foreign exchange. Every single cent, nothing goes out. How gracious and grateful they were during COVID. And thirdly, to say the need for renovations, to keep renovations within the TDA, and I commend the government on doing what they did, is because we have been able to stay ahead of the world in villas because we are offering this type of environment which is extremely competitive, and it is well needed, it is well received, and it has my complete support. So I was attempting to use 30 minutes, but I've never been able to do it. Those were the points I wanted to make, and Madam President, I'm obliged to you.
Thank you so much. Senator Blackman, the speakers on this side? Senator Blackman, please.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you very much, Madam President. I don't intend to be too long this evening, particularly given the hour, but I felt it necessary to speak in this debate, particularly given some of the contributions that were made prior. I want to briefly start at the onset, Madam President, before I get into that substantive part of my debate, also in joining colleagues, since this is my first time speaking today, in commending you for the honor and award that you have received, now being the most honorable. Like many, I've seen as a youngster, actually, the beginning of your political journey started invariably the same day of my secondary education. Well, I'm saying, not to date the president, but to show you how no. But the point is, Madam President, is to say to you, I've seen from my young years the contribution that you made as a minister, a member of parliament, and fast forward as fate would have it, when we both served as ambassadors to the UN headquarters in New York, and I in Geneva, and I must say, there was one occasion I flew over to New York for some meetings, ably facilitated by Madam President, then Ambassador. And when you walk into the UN General Assembly and anywhere in the corridors of the UN, everyone knew the ambassador, Ambassador Thompson. And it's not just that they knew her, but they saw her counsel, and she was the go-to in that space. And to now fast forward to see you receiving the honor that you have is no surprise, but it is really a testament to what you have been able to do, not just for yourself, but for generations of young people like myself who have looked up to you, and long may that continue. And in that inspiration, ma'am, you've also inspired me to correct wrongs where they exist. And now is such a time. And one of the things, and permit me to also say, particularly in the context that my daughter is here, never must she believe that those who come to public life must speak on issues and not bring the truth to the table. And I want to finish or join, Madam President, where Senator Malalou left off, and to go back to the ethos of when Arthur was Prime Minister. And he once said, and there was this road-raging debate on land and land use, and should it be in hotels or agriculture? And I see a similar thread coming here, where it's almost somehow for political expediency, and unjustly so, when the sector that pays our bills, let us face the facts. The sector that pays our bills constituting the highest percentage of our GDP, tourism. But equally, within the tourism space, as you've heard, and rightly so, the village sector continues to provide tremendous support to the tourism sector, to the economy, to the growth that we're now seeing even further, particularly after the stabilization exercise that we had to undergo after the Democratic Labour Party would have put us in a titanic moment. And now we're on the road to growth. But it's unfortunate that the Democratic Labour Party, Madam President, continues in its utterances to attack the village sector, because in their mind they're thinking that perhaps they can get political points, not realizing, Madam President, that they're attacking. When you support the village sector, when concessions are given to them, that sector, within the sector, to attack them, you're attacking, as you've heard, the housekeepers who work there, the taximen who have to go and come, the gardeners, Madam President, those who are cleaners. The idea is that you are enabling a sector so as to be able to not only provide for the industry, but those who work in the industry who make it what it is. And never in this country must we believe that Barbados in a modern era must be one that must look at the sector and scoff at it. This government has done so much within the last 6 years under trying conditions, both difficult geopolitical realities and domestic economic realities, as a result of the economic mismanagement that we inherited in 2018 from the Democratic Labour Party. I could only wish that the members of the Democratic Labour Party were in the chamber at this point, but I understand the times that we're in, Madam President. And I want to say this. To talk about the debt as if it's some mystical thing. We inherited a situation, and I want to look at the figures here, because every right-thinking Barbadian will understand the context of where we are going as a country. And I certainly, as Minister within the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment, must speak to the fact that we inherited a situation when we came in 2018, that the debt to GDP ratio, Madam President, was 178% to GDP, 178.90% to GDP. We have gone through an IMF program as a result of the mismanagement of the Democratic Labour Party. We've gone through COVID, which was far worse, Madam President, than the global financial crisis that they liked to tout back then. The last decade, they doubled the debt that was left by the Labour Party when we left office in 2008. They doubled the debt, but they did not buy a garbage truck, a bus. Not one, not two, none at all. On top of that, people who wanted to go to university in this country had to, as we say in Barbadian parlance, suck salt and stay home. They didn't fix the roads. They didn't fix the water infrastructure that was left years and years and years ago, that rotted and therefore needed replacing. They doubled the debt, but they did not do anything to build the capacity of a modern nation. But instead, they built a building that was of no benefit to anybody. But to be now lectured by a party whose record of destruction cannot be compared to anyone else in the world. To now come in here. I believe the Democratic Labour Party Madam President, should audition for the next sequel of Terminator. Because every single thing that they touch is destruction. You can only look at the summer incidences of their annual conference. I could only imagine that the Right Honourable National Hero Errol Walton Barrow is rolling across the sea as we speak this evening. Why am I saying this?
On a point of order, Madam,
we can have a long evening in here.
We do not need to
to apply for a role which the Barbados Labour Party already has. They're doing a lot of destruction to the company.
So
He's misleading.
that is no point of order. Please, Senator Blackman.
Madam President, I understand. As I said, I understand the times that we're in. I understand that there was a meeting only days ago where an honourable member, and I will not say his name, his contribution is below par and consideration is being given for removal. So I understand why he must not appear to be active and be of relevance to the Senate. I understand. Take it light. Take it light. Come in here and fluff it. Madam President, I address you. We are now in a situation having come from 178% of debt to GDP ratio at now 105. Madam President, I will repeat these figures for Barbados on the eve of Christmas. The Democratic Labour Party left us with 178% of debt to GDP ratio at now 105.6%. In other words, the debt to GDP ratio has declined. And why is that important? Because the economy has grown. Despite having to go to the IMF, despite having to contend with COVID, despite having to stabilize the economy because of the COVID and the ashfall and beryl, we are still performing. Investors, both local and foreign, are coming to this country. Increased airlift from North America, from Africa. Next year, you're going to see some major moves. From Europe, they talk about the UK. Not what they didn't mention, Madam President, is the fact that notwithstanding that we've increased our numbers out of the US, the UK market has held stable. It's not drop off, no. But it really speaks to the robust work that the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport is doing in the US market. It is a fact, and it's something that must be commended and not ran from. But we have a situation now where all the indicators, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, everybody, Finch, all the indicators not controlled by the government of Barbados is pointing that the government of Barbados and Barbados as a jurisdiction is punching and punching and punching and punching again. And that is clearly giving the Democratic Labour Party sleepless nights, but I understand why. They have a deal with destiny. So to come in here and try to lecture this chamber in circumstances where there is growth, where there is development, where there is enhanced capacity, not just for the economy, but the society. Because equally, if we want to have strong social programs, it must be underscored by a strong and robust economy. We've only seen the history and disasters of the Democratic Labour Party when they were in office. Poor economic management and tinkering with social policy led to social disaster. And we're now paying the prices for that, because a lot of the things that you see happening in society manifest sometimes 8 and 9 years prior, and they then fully germinate thereafter. And I just want to simply say this. The government is committed to ensuring that all in this country have the ability to grow, to prosper, to develop their God-given talents, their businesses, their ideas. Ministers, members on this side, get up and go to work every single day to work for this country. In circumstances where the global reality is changing constantly. And I want to encourage all of us, not just in here, Madam President, but all right-thinking Barbadians to continue to stay focused, ignore the noise, and whilst they do so, enjoy their Christmas in safety. And whether you live in Weston or Lower Carlton or anywhere, you must enjoy your Christmas. And at some point in time, you never know, you might see me somewhere coming for some jug or turkey at your house. So I thank you, Madam President.
Senator Dr. Driggs, please.
Most Honorable Madam President, it would be remiss of me not to join this debate because of the contributions that have been made prior, and for the call for accuracy in relation to how we report on things. We are dealing with the Tourism Development Amendment Bill, very simple amendment before us, but for Barbadians and all who are listening, I would like to put to the chamber the figures coming out of the Central Bank report as of September 2024. Barbados tourism arrivals, on average, between 2017 to 2019, the number 502,392 persons. For this year, 509,673 arrivals. The year has not ended. We still have 3 more months to go. So that is the first data point I'd like to put on the table. As it relates to how tourism contributes to our foreign reserves, that is indisputable. It's the #1 foreign exchange earner. However, what is lost most times in the discussion is the separation between what we earn and what goes into our reserves based on balance of payment support via debt financing and loans. Yes, make it simple, loans. We no longer receive information through the central bank's report in recent years on what our net international reserves position is. We do know the gross international reserves position, which was stated earlier, which is $3.2 billion. However, when the debate is ongoing, what is not known are the obligations or the liabilities that have to be paid to give us the net position in relation to our international reserves. So that number, that figure, I do not have. I move on. In terms of gross public sector debt, based on the same central bank report, gross public sector debt in 2018 to 2018, $12.8 billion. $12.8 billion. To date, the gross public sector debt is $14.8 billion. And I move on to break that down. The external debt in 2018 to 2019 was $3.2 billion. The external debt, or what we call foreign debt, is $5.6 billion to date. When we speak about debt, there is also best practice to talk about debt in relation to the size of the economy, which is what is best practice in economic terms. Senator Blackman noted the debt to GDP has been consistently trending downwards, which is correct, because the size of the economy has been increasing. So the debt to GDP is a relative number. Let us be very clear what that means. It is a relative number. So you can have increase in debt, an increasing economy, but in relation to a singular point in time in the past, your debt to GDP can be trending downwards. Another point I want to make is that the nominal GDP of Barbados in 2018 was $11.2 billion. Nominal GDP for 2024 was at $13.4 billion. What is also not being reported by the Central Bank of Barbados is the quantum of real GDP for Barbados. We are given the real GDP as a percentage growth. And therefore, there is a level of, I want to be very careful how I couch this. There is a level of ambiguity in the debate on certain matters when we talk about these macroeconomic indicators. And it is not to say that one side is right or one side is wrong, but it is how the facts or the data is presented that you can then make your argument. But what I also want to say is that the real GDP growth rate for this year to date has been 3.9%. Real GDP is calculated, discounted for inflation. As we know, for the last couple of years, inflation has been significantly higher compared to the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, because we've all gone through the COVID experience. However, inflation for this year was 2.7%. So if you just simply start to take a look at the growth rate of the economy versus the level of inflation, you do start to see that there is a positive platform by which the Barbados economy is operating. Albeit, that is not to say that you have good macroeconomic indicators that then have to translate into social policy and social transformation. So I just wanted to place those things on record with the source, Madam President, and for us to be very clear when we're making our political points, that we do so with a level of accuracy as it relates to our macroeconomic position, and to not skew things in a way to the extent where people are left extremely confused about what is happening in the economy. Madam President, I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Nichols, please.
Madam President, I am conscious of the time and my place in this barren order. I will rise and first also shortly pay homage to you on your achievement. I have known you from the time I came to this party over 25 years ago, and you have been a stellar leader for us as young people to emulate, and I rise to congratulate you. Madam President, when I first joined this party, it always seemed that the government has been, then under the late Owen Arthur, been on the back foot for the government's focus on the backbone of the Barbadian economy, which is the tourism sector. This amendment to the Tourism Development Act seeks to put on parity the villa sector with the hotel sector. But in 2002, when this act was passed, you were in the cabinet then in the other place. You will remember that we replaced the 1956 Hotel Aids Act with a comprehensive redevelopment for the tourism sector, intended to extend incentives to the tourism and hospitality sector beyond the traditional accommodation sector. A lot of criticism has been leveled at the Barbados Labour Party over the years. And the reason why I'm raising this debate is because I remember it was the by-election in St. Thomas in 2001, 2 days after 9/11. And when we were celebrating what seemed to be an inevitable victory, when Arthur then said to the country, things have fundamentally changed, and we will have to pull harder on tourism. And that is, I remember that speech essentially because he spoke about how Sandy Lane plantation was taken out of agriculture and used to incentivize and develop the West Coast, and the price that Grantley Adams paid for it at the time. And I want to draw the context because these debates, these themes keep coming back all of the time. And the truth is not being told about the important role that the tourism sector has played in the transformation of the Barbadian economy from a rural agrarian sugar economy to what it is today. That story has not been told, and the Labour Party has held a lot of licks politically for the support for this transformation of the Barbadian economy. And the position taken by Senator Walters, and he's not in his seat now, he's left the chamber, is symptomatic of that Democratic Labour Party worldview, that the Barbados Labour Party is all about these rich white people and they are for the people, when the truth could not be far from the reality. I've heard in this debate that we are giving these concessions. And as Senator Malulu and the leader of government business indicated, how this sector performs for the Barbadian economy. I have worked in a law firm which supported people in the sector. I also do a lot of work in the villa sector, but at the level of representing working people in relation to working issues and stuff like that. And I know how many Barbadians, a lot of Barbadians work in the villa sector. I also know too that Barbadians patronize the villa sector, especially in the low seasons, or the off-peak period that they will call it. We all go to birthday parties, christenings, wedding anniversaries, celebrations, and so. We have clients and friends who own villas. We have Barbadians who live overseas that sell their houses and rent, but they invest in the villa market. And I can say that Senator Malulu is correct. These people don't make large profits. They have to pay the land taxes. They have to pay the villa manager and the staff, the water, the maintenance, utilities, all these things in US dollars, British sterling pound, Canadian dollars, coming into the economy, keeping people alive, because not every tourist wants to go into a hotel. The intimacy of the villa is something that is spectacular. And if you think about Westmoreland coming down, that part of Barbados, and how that has developed. They didn't build hotels, but that is the heart of the villa market in Barbados and what we have as the best to offer. We felt the impact, Madam President, of COVID when the tourists stopped coming. So this notion that the concessions are being given to these people and white concessions are not being given to Barbadians is really something that we have to say something about. Mr. President, I have learned that when you hear people quoting statistics, and I'm grateful for Senator Drake's in putting the macroeconomic position of the country in perspective. We are not happy with the real rate of GDP growth, but we are striving to get it better. And the truth is that the country must recognize that the $1 billion restructuring that we had to undergo when we inherited the government in 2018 was because we were at the precipice of a devaluation. That is where we were. And then 2 or 3 years after stabilizing the economy, we had to deal with a once-in-a-generation crisis called COVID. Another $1 billion or so restructuring. And at the end of the day, this is a government that still was able to put minimum wage legislation in place for working people in this country. This is a government that was still able to give 2 salary increases to public workers. This was a government that was still able to give back the working people of Barbados a reverse tax credit. This is a government that has reduced land taxes in Barbados, carrying the threshold rate so that ordinary people who own chattel houses and people who own small bungalows are now not paying land taxes. This is a government that reduced the income tax thresholds and also the corporate tax thresholds in Barbados. We are taking less money out of your pocket than when we found the government in 2018. And we are still putting all of the social, and Senator Drake spoke about it, because if you have a macroeconomic perspective that suggests some growth, how does that translate into social policy? You had 10 years. They had 10 years of the largest tax revenue intake of any administration in Barbados, but still 0% growth in the economy. 0%. And that significantly eroded the social and human capital in Barbados. And on the back of it, you take away all the incentives that people had from credit unions, membership, all the incentives for mutual funds. You even stop people from going to University of West Indies, which was the flagship of their policy. And they didn't do that because they were happy to do it. They did it because they had no other choice. They had so run down this country that they had to abandon 50 or 60 years of a flagship policy. That is the epitome of a failure. But your flagship policy has to be abandoned on the auction block. And at the same time, they sell all the shares remaining in the corporate entities in this country. The National Bank, the Republic Bank. They sell the shares in Enlightened Power. They were so desperate for cash that they were printing money to pay salaries in Barbados. I remember doing the case for the former central bank governor who was threatened that if he didn't print money, he would be fired. And people telling me, McGregor, if you go through with this case and this injunction, public workers can't get paid this month. They had to fire the central bank governor to print money to pay salaries. This is an administration that refused to pay NIS contributions in all of the statutory boards in Barbados.
On a point of order, Madam President, Deputy President, Senator Nichols is misleading the House, and I would want to remind him that when we came to office in 2008, we took over from a Barbados Labour Party government, and we had to find money to pay for rainy day loans, which were taken out.
Continue, Senator, please.
I wish the Honourable Senator, this is his second iteration in this chamber, and I believe that we should print one of these and give him two. One for him to read, and he should, I don't know what you do with the other, but you need two of these. Because anyhow, this is an administration that refused to pay the pensions in statutory boards that we are now having to top up in some statutory boards that we cannot get on with the restructuring in Barbados. They set up statutory pension plans that refuse to pay the contributions to the workers in this country. And they want to give the people of Barbados the impression that it was 10 glorious years. This is an administration that Senator Blackman said that they did not buy a bus, but they were buying bus parts at $2 million a month. $2 million every month.
On the point of order, Madam Deputy President, may we also, Senator Nichols is again misleading the chamber. The Barbados Labour Party has taken over $1 billion out of the NIS, and now as a result of that, forcing persons to retire at a later date. That is worse than, that is a travesty to pensions in Barbados.
Honourable Senator, you will recall the ruling earlier in the day on the matter of source material. Where do you derive this fiction from?
Madam Deputy President, If it is fiction, it would have had to come from the government because it is well known that over $1 billion was taken out of the national insurance in the debt restructuring program.
That is no point of order. That is no point of order.
Madam Deputy President.
We are not repeating rumor, etc. in here.
Deputy President, you can't argue with the chair.
We are not arguing with the chair.
It's in George Street.
No, and you can't lock me out either. You will not argue with the chair. No. Senator Nichols, please.
Madam Deputy President, this administration is finding funds to pay people who the government was indebted to in the last administration. We had to pass the Series J bonds legislation to deal with controlling the amount of debt, to give us the fiscal space to do the things that we have to do to keep people employed, keep people educated, keep the roads fixed in this country. This is what we are doing, and get them fixed. No, I keep hearing this thing about the national insurance. The actuarial reports, and I beg Madam Deputy President to see if we can make them available to Senator Worrell, because he might not have access to the internet where he's from. But the actuarial reports show that notwithstanding the adjustment that had to be made in the debt restructuring, that the government would have had to increase the rate of national insurance, increase the amount of contributions people make, or lower the benefits because of the demographic profile of the country. And that is a fact. That is in the actuarial review, the last actuarial review, notwithstanding the $1 billion adjustment. But you want to know why the government had to do a $1 billion adjustment in national insurance? This is not national insurance money that the Barbados Labour Party lick out, you know. This is national insurance money that the Democratic Labour Party lick out. And the national insurance is saying to the government, you owe us this money. And the government is saying that this time, in our judgment, we can't handle that right now. It is not to say that the Barbados Labour Party in the future, when the economy continues to grow and we have the fiscal space, that those funds will not be returned to national insurance. We did it already. We did it when you cut people's salaries by 8% and laugh and tell the BLP that they can pay back the people. Okay. I voted against the repayments too, you know, when they were in opposition. This is the history. I don't want to remind the public of Barbados who they are dealing with, and that it is chalk and cheese. So this $1 billion that they're claiming, people might get the mistaken view that it had something to do with us, but that deficit in the national insurance was something that we found that we either had to take it out of the treasury that didn't have it at the time, or the national insurance had to take the hit like everyone else under the debt restructuring. And it gives the government the flexibility to adjust it in a future date. The government is not in a position to do so now. We are finding the fiscal space to deal with all the challenges, and we have to deal with the storms, ashfalls, volcanoes, hurricanes, and convection rain. The impact of climate change, and that's why we are doing things like the debt for nature swaps, the disaster clauses in our loans. And all of these things are being done in the name of the people. They had no answers to these things. Imagine if COVID had found the DLP in office, when we were told that potholes were inconveniences. You imagine the nature of the leadership that we provide, and that is why the only concession that I understand the people of Barbados are given is 2/3 loves, you know. That is the only concession, because they weren't here. So we are now having to hear this constant noise about the government in doing nothing for people. You imagine they raised salaries once in 10 years. We did it twice in 6 years. In all the adjustment that we've had, we have increased all these pensions. All the things that they say we cannot do, we are doing. I was in this chamber 2 years ago when they said that the economy, we can't get the economy to grow. You remember that? They were challenging us that we couldn't get the economy to grow. Where's the growth going to come from?
So, Mr. President, Madam Deputy President, I had to intervene in the debate because this notion that the Tourism Development Act and the incentives now being given to villas is at the expense of something that the people of Barbados would otherwise be getting. It is something that we had to respond to. You know, Madam Deputy President, in spite of the Tourism Development Act, the Democratic Labour Party gave concessions to sandals, tax holidays that will end when we are long gone from this earth. They didn't disclose that to people. They give tax holidays to a supermarket to open up under the guise that it will reduce cost of living in Barbados. Remember, cost you less. It ain't cost somebody less, it costs you more. You imagine incentivizing with tax holidays, VAT, income tax, corporate tax, everything to supermarket. We got supermarkets in Barbados already. But we can see businesses expanding in Barbados, businesses coming to Barbados, Coleman has come into Barbados, and we didn't have to roll out the tax concessions to get them to open a store. But the secret deals, and we hear and government ministers driving about in $100,000 cars, $200,000 cars, but paid for by people who are contracting with the government. 40 and 50 engines up by the Transport Board imported in barrels. None in work. Not one. I'm spending $3 million a day in parks for 10 years. Why would I like to be a shareholder in Simpson Motors? That is what we were dealing with when we came to office. And they had the temerity to come into this chamber and accuse the Barbados Labour Party administration of not caring about people. None whatsoever, no shame. So that I'm sorry to disturb the peace, love, and harmony which would ordinarily prevail on this week before Christmas. I am looking forward to going downstairs and drinking some sorrel and sing a duet with Senator Tate. In Jesus' name, I should say. But we have had to endure this nonsense all of the time. And you know the $300 million concessions given to hotels? Not all of that was subscribed for. Not all of that was subscribed. All the hotels didn't utilize those funds in the BEST program. But the BEST program was managed by an entity that we created called the Enterprise Growth Fund of Barbados that manages an agricultural development fund. I hear that we don't do anything for agriculture. The modern agriculture sector in Barbados survives because in spite of the changes from Lomé to the GATT agreement and the World Trade or the WTO agreement and all the liberalization that we had to undergo, we were able to set up an institution that 25 years later, it is holding its own. Huh? And you will hear that we're not doing anything for the small man because that is the 1950 drivel that comes from the mouth of the Democratic Labour Party. They oppose the water harbour. They oppose the highway. They oppose the post office. They oppose the central bank building. And if you go back to the annals of Parliament, you will see that they will tell you we should not have any highways in Barbados. I want the young people to Barbados to know that the Democratic Labour Party told the country that it was to land like airplanes to bring in drugs to poison it. That is in the records of Hansard. That was the purpose of the highway. When we wanted to bring in a medical school, to say we imported Dracula. Dracula. When we expanded the defense force, we would be buying boots to cover soldier toe. Everything that is the pillar of the modern Barbadian society, the defense force now responds in so many ways, in so many times to all of the things that we have to deal with in this country. But every major thing that we have done, they criticize for criticizing state. But we are benefiting from these things now. Madam Deputy President, God bless the Barbados Labour Party.
Senator Cummings, please.
Madam President, I think after the contributions that have been made, certainly starting with Senator Malalu earlier when he was responding in great detail about the Villa segment. We heard also from Senator Drakes on the economic numbers and how they are to be considered, and the earliest contribution made by Senator Maynard to correct the inaccuracies as it relates to the fishing sector. And now rounding it out, Senator Nichols speaking most comprehensively on all of the other matters. All that is left for me to do at this stage, Madam President, in endorsing the comments made by Senator Blackman as well on the overall value of the tourism sector is to say, Madam President, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Senator Cummings, I think that is unprecedented. The question is that this bill be now read a second time. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you say no? The ayes have it.
Madam President, I beg to move that we revert to public business for the purpose of appointing an acting deputy president. Senator Malalu was previously appointed. He's now left, and I beg to move that we appoint Senator Linda Nurse as the acting deputy president for the remainder of today's sitting.
The question is that we do now appoint Senator Nurse as acting deputy president for the remainder of the day's sitting. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? There are no noes. The ayes have it.
Madam President, I beg to move that Your Honour do not leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it.
Senate is in committee.
Clause 1. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 do now stand part. Will all those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2. Mr. Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 do now stand part. Will all those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to Her Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to Her Honour the acting president the passing of one bill in committee. Will all those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The acting deputy president has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Madam President, I beg to move that this bill now be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be now read a third time. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Madam President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as a Tourism Development Amendment Act of 2024.
The question is that this act do now pass and be cited as the Tourism Amendment Act, Tourism Development Amendment Act 2024. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it. This bill is now passed and cited as the Tourism Development Amendment Act 2024. Before we move to the conclusion of our business, we need to take cognizance of the passing of the sister of the clerk of the Parliament. The niece, I beg your pardon, the niece. The clerk is not with us at the moment. He has gone off to the viewing, but the record will note that the Senate has expressed deep condolences to the clerk and his family. It must be it's always difficult to lose family members, but particularly at this time of year, it has a certain additional bitterness and pain, and we would want to extend our prayers to the family to uphold them through the season and as they go forward. May she rest in eternal peace.
Madam President, this brings us to the end of government's business for today's sitting, and in fact, government's business for the remainder of the season. And so I don't clap for that yet, but I want to also join in expressing condolences to the Clerk of Parliament. If many of us would recall, a few months ago, we attended the funeral service for his sister, and it is now the daughter of the sister whose funeral we attended who has now passed on just a few months after the fact. And so we are very empathetic to the issues that the family, the grief that the family is now facing at this point. And so we want to formally extend our condolences, but also certainly from those of us who are in cabinet and will not be able to attend the funeral tomorrow as we would ordinarily, just to send our condolences to the family. But we're going to move from a sad note to a happy note, and to say that having concluded today's business for the year, I want to thank all of the honorable senators, government senators, opposition senators. You've joined us during the course of this year, the independent senators as well. It has been an active year for the Senate. We've had multiple sittings. We've passed a number of important bills. As the year opens up, we expect that there will be a number of additional measures that will be coming before this honorable chamber. And I expect that the robust debate will continue in the same way that we have seen it this year, that the commitment to service will continue in the way we have seen it through this year, and the engagement on the matters that concern the people of Barbados will continue into next year as we have seen it this year. And I want to wish every member of this honorable Senate, every member of the Parliament that serves the members of the Senate, the police officers, the catering team, the officers who are downstairs, the administrative staff, everyone who has supported the operations and the work of this Parliament this year. I want to express appreciation on behalf of the government of Barbados and on behalf of the entire Senate. So Merry Christmas to all of you. Have a happy holiday, and as Senator John King said to us during the lunch break, make sure and keep Christ in your Christmas.
Senator Worrell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. And in joining with the tradition, I want to also offer condolences to the family of the clerk, and also join with the leader of government business in extending, this is the one few occasion where we actually see eye to eye and agree on something. So we should not let this moment pass. But in extending warm greetings to all members of the Senate and all persons who work here at Parliament to make these sessions comfortable, the persons in the journal department, the security, the persons who provide hospitality as well, to wish all of them and all of you a very Merry Christmas and a happy 2025. And I hope that we spend the time reflecting on the good for which God has done for all of us. Remember the true meaning of Christmas. And wherever we can, also share some love and kindness with others. And hopefully that will translate into a movement in this country where we begin to show more love and affection for others, not only at Christmas, but throughout as well. So I want to extend warm greetings to all of you for the Christmas season, and to all Barbadians who are listening and following these debates as well. And we look forward to being back here with you in 2025 for more robust debates.
If I may, I should like to add my own greetings, my holiday greetings to those already expressed, to members of the public who pay attention to the sitting and the debates in this chamber. You would be surprised at the number of people, young and old, who do listen and can tell you what was said and what was not said, and give their views on matters relating to national affairs. We already thanked the catering and related staff earlier in the day, and I just repeat our appreciation. But I do want to take, and the Senator has expressed attitude to all of the support staff, including our security personnel and the police officers. But I particularly want to thank all of the senators who come and do the work of the people of Barbados. That is paramount. My greatest gratitude goes, however, to our clerk and deputy clerks. They make this institution run and run well. This is one of the most respected parliaments in the Commonwealth, and it has to do with the quality of their work. Earlier today, when speaking to the support staff, I noted, and I would wish to reiterate on the record, that this has been an extremely busy year, to the extent that one former senator complained about the pace and the volume of work. But beyond that, there were the number of committees which sat, the number of select committees, the public hearings on matters of public interest on bills before the House, and even more important, or taking up far more time of the clerks and the administrative support staff who dealt with these matters were the two commissions, the Constitutional Review Commission and the Parliamentary Reform Commission, both of which concluded, I think, in the second half of the year, or the third quarter of the year, which had been going in one instance, I think, for about 2 years and the other for about 15 months. The clerk and deputy serviced the PRC, and the work was intense. The PRC met weekly for 8 and 10 hours a week. In fact, I noted elsewhere that something like 32,000 people viewed the meetings of the Parliamentary Reform Commission online. That is unprecedented in our history. So when we think that people are not paying attention, they really are. And it behooves us, all of us, whatever our role, to perform to the utmost of our capabilities and to deliver to Barbados the best that we possibly can and ensure this country the brightest possible future. We come back next term. We will again draw our swords. I use, of course, this metaphorically as we debate because we will not agree on the issues. But even in that, the sharing of multiple perspectives on which people can engage, have debate, and the lenses through which the issues can be viewed is an important part of our democracy, and we must not ignore the value of being able to share these multiple perspectives. And the public will take what they want and dismiss what they want, as they are entitled to do. Let me wish all of you, members, staff, support staff, and by extension, your families, God's richest blessings over the Christmas. I wish you health and happiness in 2025. And I urge you to remember that in the church, this is the season in which we speak of Emmanuel, God with us. What does that mean? What does it mean to you as an individual? What does it mean to you as a Barbadian? May God be with us all. Happy holidays.
Madam President, I beg to move that this sitting of the Senate be adjourned sine die.
The question is that this sitting be now adjourned sine die. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it. Merry Christmas.